Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Not really happy today. We've been in different circumstances. What happened last night in Cincinnati. All our prayers go out to DeMar's family. He's in Cincinnati right now, so hopefully he will get a speedy recovery. So, welcome to the Sports Talk with Chris Heidel here on a I don't want to say a gloomy Tuesday night, but a different Tuesday night that we normally don't really have. Normally we're upbeat, making fun of each other. And,
Subdued.
huh?
Subdued.
Yes.
Subdued is a good word.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Like one guy used to say, the show must go on. But we will talk more about this stuff later in the program. Here, we're on until 9:30 tonight, folks. We'll have Bob Newton. He was a player for the Chicago Bears back in 1971 when a player for the Lions died on the field. Huggins was the name. Never caught a pass until he caught one and had a heart attack. So we're going to talk to Bob, but he was there because he was the guard for the Bears, and he saw with his own eyes. We'll also try to play my interview this afternoon with Dave Lampton, who I had a chance to talk to. I want to say thank you to him out there, and if he's out there tuning in or whatever, thanks for giving us your time today. I know it's been a very somber thing going on in Cincinnati, so we don't need to recap what happened. We all know what happened. We all know, where you were, but I'd like to know, where were you guys? Where were you when you saw that, George? Were you watching the game? Were you just watching something else, or what were
I
you?
had actually just flipped out. I just flipped out of the game to something else,
Okay.
and saw it pop up on the old feed. So and then I tuned in just like a few moments after it happened.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Matt? Matt, what did you get? Were you watching Monday Night Football, or what were you watching?
No, I was not watching Monday Night Football. I found out this morning on my way to work when I
Oh,
went on to ESPN.
okay. All right. And what was your thoughts about it? Were you like, shocked? Were you like,
I was shocked because I've never, of all the decades I've been watching college NFL, I've never heard that happen. So yeah, that's really disheartening to hear, and I hope that the guy makes it, and I hope that he recovers quickly.
yeah? Well, let's talk to the resident Bill fan here. He had a
Yeah,
chance. He was watching.
I was watching, and when I saw it last night, my mind, it was like you saw the ambulance come out, and it's like
Mm,
you saw the backboard come out, and then I think ESPN did an incredible job. Joe Buck, Troy Aikman, Lisa Salters, Ryan Clark, Scott Van Pelt, Coley Harvey, all those reporters did an incredible job of talking about it. I know it wasn't easy, but but the thoughts and prayers are with DeMar Hughes
yeah.
and
There
his
was, you
family.
probably saw the. I got a press release this afternoon from Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh. EJ sent it to me. Coach Pat Gaduzzi said, DeMar Hamlin is more than just a football player. He's a loving son, brother, and friend. DeMar is a hero to thousands of Pittsburgh kids. And DeMar, we love you. We pray for you. And Pittsburgh always has your back. And now almost the entire country has your back too. So that's very nice from Pat Peduzzi.
Yes.
Who
Yep.
I was wondering about him last night because that's one of his players he recruited,
Yep.
and
Yep.
and you're like a father figure to these players, and it's like
Mhm.
one of your sons is going down. What was your feeling like with that? So anyway, so we're going to talk about more about that later, like Ed Sullivan and other people. So the show must go on. So we're going to do the best we can tonight, and try to give you guys some something not to think about. But it is hard to start. We think about what's happening, but if we hear anything that comes along, we'll pass it along to you. If we see anything, if George sees the stats or something or something that comes out, but we hope he will be able to speedy recovery. So if you were tuning in on New Year's Eve, you saw some great college football playoff semifinal games. First one was in the desert, and I was very shocked that TCU just taking advantage. I thought Michigan was going to run all over them in that first series.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, took it off, but they didn't. They only scored what? Yeah, they didn't even put it. They got what? They lost a turnover on downs, but it was like that first play that Edwards took it up the middle for like what 45, 50 yards.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was a pretty. You thought at the time going, wow, this is going to be a blowout, but TCU hung in there, and so. But we have the guy who was there in Phoenix at the in Glendale. It's not Phoenix, it's Glendale. Glendale's actually George is 18 minutes from where you were for work.
It is.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I was like, wow, that's like Towson right here.
Factor in traffic, it's about an hour.
About an hour.
Oh, okay.
So let's bring in Landry Burdine, who is on the sidelines for TCU, the Horned Frogs, getting ready to go out to beautiful California to hopefully win their first national title since 1936. Landry,
I think it's 38. Yeah,
38.
I think it's 30. Yeah, but you're close.
Yeah, I'm close. So let's talk about the feeling out there on New Year's Eve, the Fiesta Bowl. You guys saw Michigan get that big carry, and all of a sudden you guys just took over, in the first quarter, and you played. Michigan had to play catch up throughout the rest of the game.
Yeah, it was a fun day. That was one of those games that you'll remember forever. It's obviously a huge one from a program standpoint, but just to be able to play in one that had some implications where you could maybe play another one. That's kind of the first time that's happened, and for TCU to be the one to kind of kick the door down was a lot of fun. So, going in, TCU was pretty confident after having watched a lot of film and studied Michigan kind of top to bottom. I think the Frogs knew they were going to have at least a speed advantage, and I think the question was, how physical were both football teams going to be? And, if you watch TCU football this year, you knew that they would be able to, bring the hammer, so to speak. And I think that played out. So it was a lot of fun, man. No question about it. It's a good weekend and good day to be a Frog. Let's
bring back George. George, welcome back, sir. Go ahead.
Hey, it's good to be back. So Landry, they always say something good comes out of a loss. Okay. TCU loses their championship game, right? I think that feeds the fire. And, Coach has been, in all the interviews I saw with Coach, he's talked about we're going to be true to ourselves, we're going to be ourselves, and we're going to play our game. They did that. They executed what they needed to do in the first quarter, and that was to make Michigan have to play catch up.
Yeah, I think that's right. The goal is to get off to a fast start, and there have been games this season where TCU's not done that, and so to get that first defensive touchdown was huge. But I think you kind of hit it on the head that the game plan that both sides of the ball, the staffs for TCU put into play, was masterful. They did a really good job of scheming Michigan. They knew how they wanted to block them up front, on the run game. They knew from a skill position standpoint that, they had probably better skill players than Michigan did. And they really figured out ways to get the ball in the hands of, Quentin Johnston and, who will be a first rounder. And they knew going in that they were going to be able to run the football. At least they thought they did. And, the question was, is Michigan going to run it all over TCU? And, in leading up to that game, I told guys that I talked to, I said, look, they faced a heck of a rushing attack against Texas and held Bijan Robinson to 19 yards. Baylor, in my opinion, is one of the better teams at running the football in the country. And the Frogs had, some success against them. And, the first Kansas State game against Deuce Vaughn and that offensive line for K-State, they did pretty well there too. So, I mean, they faced some tests for sure. And it's just a credit to the coaches, man, to put together the game plan they did was really good. And their ability to teach that to those guys and up to and including the halftime, where they made adjustments and to be able to translate that in a chaotic environment with a lot on the line and for the guys to go execute, it says a lot for everybody involved in that program.
Well, I got to tell you, Landry, I put the jinx on them when they were about to go up another 2 touchdowns. and then Michigan comes back and they picked off that interception. I was like, I should have kept my mouth shut because I put the episode alert out and now it's 41-38. And I'm like, I just screwed the Frogs.
Yeah, yeah. You got to be careful there, man. You can't be putting hexes on the Frogs, but no, it's a team that doesn't panic, man. That they really have faced a lot of adversity this season. They had a gauntlet in, I think it was October, where they faced 4 ranked teams in a row. They had to go on the road to Texas, on the road to Baylor right after, and this is all after a bye week in week 2. They had a gauntlet. They've been playing playoff football for the last 11 weeks. So, it's a group of guys that's led by a bunch of seniors. And that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand. If you're going to win football games at the highest level, you got to have some older guys in the room. And they've got senior leaders at pretty much every key position, across the board. I tell you, the interesting one that's not, though, is Dominic Williams, who's a true freshman nose guard going up against the Remington Award-winning center for Michigan, and held his own. Not only held his own, but did a hell of a job. And that was really impressive to me. So they don't panic, man. That comes from Sonny Dykes. He's just got that kind of personality where it's, hey man, it's all business. Do your job and worry about the next play. And they did a good job with that. But yeah, no more jinxes, man. I don't need any of those in the national championship game.
Yeah, Adam, you got a question?
Yeah. First of all, I'm gonna eat crow, Landry, because I picked Michigan over TCU when Chris and I made our picks last year. So I'm eating crow. And all I got to say is never mess with the Hypnotoad. I am a fan of Futurama, so I know all about the Hypnotoad. And let's talk about your team down there in Fort Worth. Quarterback Max Duggan, what can you say? He is an exceptional talent. Sonny Dykes is an incredible coach down there. But I got to ask you, you think it'll be a Texas-size shootout to win the national title after what you saw Georgia had to come back against Ohio State in the Peach Bowl? I'm going to say first team to 50 wins the national title.
Yeah, as soon as we say that, it'll be 9-6. I'm definitely tempted to take the over. I'd be lying if I didn't say that, just because of the way both teams play and the way they can move the football, and how good both teams really are. But you just don't know until you get into these games. You don't know how they're going to unfold. You don't know how much film these guys have watched, how well they know each other, how they're feeling, right? How rested are these guys? You just don't know. But one thing I can tell you with both of these teams, you don't get to the national championship game without being damn good. And, these teams are both really good. They're both really good in complementary ways. So this game is kind of good on good, right? I mean, you got 2 really good offenses. You got 2 defenses that have bended but not broken at key moments. They're opportunistic. They create turnovers. But here's the thing, man, with the Frogs, what I will tell you is that, you're going to know they were there. You may beat them. They may get beat, but you're going to walk out of that stadium and you're going to be like, man, you made me pack a lunch, because that was a long freaking day playing those jokers. And it's going to be no different next Monday night. I have no reason to think that it's going to be any different. And, again, I credit a lot of that to the senior leaders on this team.
Yeah. Landry, there is a guy from this area, Hodges. He's from Maryland. He actually went to Navy, so it's pretty cool to have a guy in the state of Maryland. There's a lot of Maryland kids playing in this game. There's 2 on Georgia and 1 on you guys. So it's great that the state of Maryland has something going to root for, but hopefully they'll root for the Horned Frogs.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Johnny Hodges has been a heck of an addition. They picked him up in the portal from Navy. He won the starting job at linebacker. And just a hard nose, exactly what you would think from a guy that was at the Naval Academy. But he's been a delight, man. He's just been awesome to be around. And I wish we had, 10 more of him. I just can't say enough good things about him.
Yeah. Matt, you got a question? You got to unmute yourself. You're pulling George.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought I did, but I guess
fair.
I was talking to myself. So first of all, I want to say that TCU did a phenomenal job. Everyone that I spoke to was saying Michigan, Michigan. I said no. I said take TCU. TCU is playing that big time underdog role. Okay, so can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You're going in and out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you hear me? Can you hear him, Landry?
Okay, so
Yeah.
well,
I
yeah.
got it.
Okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead, finish.
so they were playing the big underdog role, and so it was just absolutely when you got a team like that, okay, like TCU, I believe it was back in 2014 where people feel well, they felt like they should have gotten to the playoffs and stuff. They have something to prove, okay? I told people don't count TCU out. They will beat Michigan, and people look at me like I had 10 heads. But TCU has a great like they got a phenomenal head coach. They got a phenomenal quarterback, a phenomenal team that works together. So just tell me, why do you think that they've experienced so much success with Sonny Dykes as a first-year head coach at TCU?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think change is always good. It can be good. It can be a lightning rod. It can re-energize a team and a fan base. I played for the Frogs in the late '90s. I was a safety, and in 1997 we won one game. The next year, Dennis Franchione and Gary Patterson came in, and we went to the Sun Bowl and beat USC. And that was the first bowl win in 50 years. And I think TCU's been to 19 bowl games since then. I think they've won like 15 of those. So the success is not new. I think the country may be shocked, but the folks around Fort Worth aren't. Like you mentioned, 2014, the Frogs should have been in the playoff, but they go and they beat an Ole Miss team that was, largely regarded as one of the best teams, if not the best in the country. They'd beaten Bama that year, and TCU beat them 42-3. Had TCU been allowed in the playoff that year, that's the best football team I've ever seen. And there's not a doubt in my mind the Frogs won the national championship then. Then you go back to 2010 when they beat a top 5 team in Wisconsin in the Rose Bowl, go 13-0 with Andy Dalton and some guys leading the team. And at that time the national championship wasn't even in the mathematical equation for them. They go 13-0 and they get a pat on the head. So for this to happen, it took all of those things to happen, I think, and it's just been brick by brick, year after year, with a huge investment from the administration, and just continuing to pay their coaches well and invest in facilities. And this didn't happen overnight. And TCU's been one of the better college football teams over the last 15 years, and that's not even really up for negotiation. So it's just nice to be able to see this finally come to fruition. We all knew once TCU was allowed in, they kicked the damn door down. That's exactly what's happened.
Exactly.
And just one follow-up question with that. It's been 85 years since they won a national championship. Okay, so what would it mean for TCU, their program, the fan base, if they were to pull off the upset and to beat Georgia?
It'd mean everything. It really would. It would be some sweet revenge. It would be validation. It would be program changing in literally every way, from a monetary standpoint to a prestige standpoint. In a lot of ways, the Frogs are having their pick of recruits right now. It's pretty fun to see. And when you put recruits in a system that is a competitive system that rewards guys who win jobs outright, and but also nurtures them and helps in their development, that's how you build a program that lasts. And this staff and this regime have taken these guys to the next level. So I mean, it would literally mean everything. That you can go back and see a lot of big wins in the program history. That Fiesta Bowl win's probably the biggest because of everything that was on the line. So to be able to stack one on top of that, man, yeah, that's, you don't get any better than that.
Exactly. Well, Landry, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and have a safe trip to California. And hopefully, you'll bring home the win. And it's going to be great to see a different team winning the championship instead of somebody from the SEC. Hopefully.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you guys having me on, and go Frogs.
All right, man.
Frogs.
Thanks.
Go
Go
Frogs.
Go Frogs.
Go Frogs.
It's called
Thanks,
Fear the
guys.
Frog.
That's right.
All right, that's Landry Bourdain, who is the sideline reporter for TCU football. Adam, you have an update on
I
Lamar.
do, Chris. I have Josh Reed, who is a reporter or a sports director up in Buffalo, New York, tweeted out about half an hour ago. He said he just spoke with Damar Hamlin's uncle.
Mhm.
Damar was originally on 100% oxygen, now down to 50%. Says the family is hanging in there. He's saying Bills fans and Bengals fans and asked for continued prayers.
Oh my God! So I guess it got a little worse than before, right?
No, he's better.
He's better.
down from-
Okay.
He's down
Yeah.
from having 100% applied oxygen to 50%.
Okay, that's good.
That's better.
Right? That's excellent.
Yeah, it's called. Yeah, so so just continue to pray for Damar Hamlin and his family, and so
That's great.
hopefully
Great
we'll get some more news as our program airs, and if any of us hear anything, we'll be sure to let you know.
Exactly. So let's bring in. Let's change the segment here. Let's go to international flavor. Let's get down to down there in the Latin America and all that stuff. Let's bring in Luciano. How do you say the last name, George?
Chatelaine?
Chatelaine. I hope he did
Chatelaine.
it right.
Yep.
So Luciano. Hey, Luciano, how you doing?
Hey guys, I'm doing great. Thank you very much for having me on. How are you?
I try not to butcher last names, and that's one of my goals in 2023 is do the best I can with last names so I don't butcher them, or destroy them, or It's like I was doing an interview today, and I kind of messed up on Damar's last name, and I had to edit it out. It's like, yeah.
Hey, don't worry. I know it's a complicated one.
So let's talk about first of all, let's talk about your side about the situation last night in Cincinnati. What was your take on it?
Well, what happened with Damar? You mean?
Yeah, Damar. Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know what to say. Just praying for him. The hit didn't really seem that hard at first. I mean, I was honestly shocked when it happened. I mean, it was a hard hit, but it's nothing that you don't see in the NFL almost every single game. So the fact that Damar just stood up after that and fell the way he did, I was honestly shocked. I would have never expected that to happen. And just praying for him to get better as soon as possible.
Yeah, we're all here praying. So let's talk about the game in Frisco on Sunday between South Dakota State and North Dakota State. It's the border war. It's not like Florida State, Florida, or Georgia, Florida, or Notre Dame and Purdue, or it's the Notre Dame and USC. I'm sorry, I'm thinking about states, dude. I'm thinking about states. Yeah. I know Purdue doesn't. They don't. Those two used to play each other, Notre Dame, right? But it wasn't like a huge rivalry, was it? Yeah, so that's what I was trying to say. So anyway, so what's your take on last week when we talked to the players and the coaches on Zoom? It seemed like they already played each other before, so they know each other's.
Yeah, I do believe it's going to be a great game. I mean, you might be able to take something from their first game, of course, but probably not that much. Mainly given the fact that the roster that NDSU started the season with and the one they have now, it's probably not even comparable. I mean, they've really had a whole lot of injuries. And let's see, Hunter Lupke, of course, All-American fullback and pro prospect, won't be available. Noah Grindorf, the tight end, is also a pro prospect. Even though he didn't play in the first game, he also won't be available here. They are down 2 tight ends. Their second running back, Tamarick Williams, is questionable. Kobe Johnson, even though he is expected to play and didn't in the first game, got hurt last game. Their defensive tackle, Eli Mostert, is an All-American and has been out for a while. His twin brother got injured too. He's their center, although their backup is honestly really good. And the right tackle, also out with some players that entered the transfer portal. So they really won't have the same roster. That's what, I don't really want to jump too quickly to a prediction, but I must say that even though, even if NDSU would be at 100% with all their stars available, I would still pick SDSU to win. If you take all of these injuries into account, I must lean even stronger to the Jack side.
George, go ahead. You have a question for him?
Let's see here. Oh, what's the big disadvantage for North Dakota then?
For North Dakota,
Yes.
the disadvantage I would say would be those injuries, but you obviously, on the flip side, they have the advantage of the experience. Of course, they have been there 9 times. This will be their 10th. They have won every single one of them, and there's an impressive stat. I hope I'm not wrong on this one, but NDSU has an active streak of 39 consecutive games without losing a game when they have more than 7 days to prepare for it. The streak is active since 2005. So that's certainly an advantage. Even though SDSU has the experience, they have been in the national championship game in the spring of 2021. They had only 7 days, to prepare for that game. They didn't have 3 weeks. So it will be different. It is something that NDSU is more accustomed to, and SDSU, even though they do have some sort of experience, it's certainly not the same. So I would say that's the advantage for them, and the flip side, the disadvantage would clearly be their health.
Hey Matt, you have a question?
Yes. So do you think this is going to be a high scoring game or a low scoring game? And also, do you think that North Dakota State, do you think, what are their chances of winning this game?
I mean, mainly, of course, they have a chance to win. I mean, they are the active dynasty. They are the ones with all the national titles to SDSU's none. And they really have an impressive roster. I mean, even though I have talked a lot about their injuries, it almost seems like an FBS team when you talk about their depth. They really have the next man up mentality. So they have a roster full of stars. A lot of players that turn down preferred walk-on offers to go there and know they have a great chance to win given what they have built there and their dynasty. So I'm certainly not counting them out. They have a really good chance of winning. I simply think that SDSU will come out on top. And talking about where it will be a high scoring or low scoring game, I mean, you do have to take the first game into account. NDSU blitz more than they usually do at the start of their first matchup. They normally trust their guys up front to win at the line of scrimmage, and well, as they usually do too. They rotated very well between different personnel, where it may be 10, 11, 12, or even 13. And SDSU at the beginning of that game seemed to struggle to catch up to that rotation. But once they were able to adapt to that and adjust, the game really changed. NDSU also used a lot of option plays on offense during the first half and attacked SDSU's secondary quite a lot. In the second half, SDSU was able to adjust properly on defense. They didn't allow big plays, and their defensive line controlled the entire game. So to answer your question, I think it's more likely that it will be a low-scoring game. The two defenses are really impressive. And I must say that I don't know if NDSU has really what it takes to stretch the field as they might need to win the game. SDSU's passing defense is truly impressive, one of the best in the country. And yeah, I will have to to lead to a low scoring game. I don't really remember what the under is, but the over under line. But I might have to take the under.
Adam, you got a question?
Yeah, I'm gonna make an early prediction, and I'm gonna say North Dakota State goes back to Fargo with the national championship. And for those, this is like a huge rivalry. It's the border war showdown for a national title. They already played this year, so I think it's going to be a high scoring game. But do you think the atmosphere will be just as crazy in Frisco as we've seen it in the Fargo Dome when the Bison and Jack Rabbits play each other?
I don't think you can really ever compare a neutral site game to a game on campus, especially when you're talking about the Fargo Dome. I mean, that's really one of a kind. So I don't know if the atmosphere will be exactly the same, even though it will be great. And I think it is really good for the FCS that these two teams have made the championship game, not only because they are, 1 and 3 in the nation, and you could argue they are the two best teams in the country, no doubt. But also, because of this rivalry that you have talked about, I think the attendance is supposed to be really good, which maybe wouldn't be the case if other two teams would have made the game. So I think even though it will be a great atmosphere, it is a national championship after all, and it is a great rivalry. It will not be the same as it was in the Fargo Dome.
That's true. Luciana, real quick, before I let you go, tell everybody what you do, because I've been on a lot of Zoom calls lately, and you've been on all the Zoom calls for SBS, even the Super Bowl we were on there last year as well. So talk about your publication. What do you do?
Yeah, with Ensoners, we're a Latin American online media network. You can follow us at ensoners.net and all of our social networks at Ensoners on Twitter, ensoners.ok on Facebook and on Instagram. We actually do it just for the love of the game. We're just a couple of South American fans that really love the sport and just want to make it more and more popular in this region, down under, where even though it is certainly growing, it's still not as popular as we would like. So we really do it just because we love it. We are currently making, we do make some money, but we can't call ourselves professionals just because of what we do here at Ensoners, but we really work a lot on it because we love it and are trying to grow not only our media network, but also the sport in the region. That's our main goal, and that's what we want to do. We try to make all of our content accessible to everyone. We met each other on the press conference. We translate every single word that they said and subtitle all of the clips that we take from every question that we ask. That's our goal, and that's what we do.
That's cool. Well, keep up the good work, and thanks for coming on, and hope to hear from you on Sunday, probably on that Zoom call.
We will. Thank you very much for having me on, and best of luck. Take care.
All right, man. Thanks. Talk to you soon.
Take it easy.
All right, buddy. That's Luciana Chanlinen, who does the End Zoners, a Latin American publication for all college sports and pro as well. So it's good to have see what the different feel is in international, sports around here. So, George, would you like to be the honors to welcome this next person in from the CBS Sports? So we look like.
Oh no, you got this one, Chris.
Oh, I got that one. Thanks, buddy.
I'll do it.
All right, Adam, do it, dude.
Our next guest is a writer for CBS Sports, and so let's bring in Shehan Jirarajai. Did I pronounce your last name right? Giardia?
You're 0 for 2, but that's okay. It's
Okay.
Shahan Jayaraja.
Okay.
Hey, I would have butchered. I would have been butchered it all over the place. It'd be like 6 takes, and forget about it. Yeah.
No worries, no worries. The thing
yes,
that I
sir.
always say, right, is eventually we learned how to say Giannis Antetokounmpo. So eventually, hopefully, we'll get to a place where we can
True.
say Shahan Jayaraja too.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about this bowl season. These bowl games, there weren't a lot of blowouts. I think they were pretty competitive. We were really shocked because some of the bowl games we think in the beginning of the bowl season was going to be like blowouts, but they were actually pretty decent games. What games in the early before New Year's? What did you? Which one was your favorite one?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually crunched some of the numbers. So there were 43 bowl games this year, and out of the 43, 22 of them were decided by one score. And actually, out of those 22, 12 were decided by 3 or fewer points. So this was actually one of the most competitive bowl seasons I think we've had in a long time. Obviously, we can talk at length about the playoff games. Obviously, those were 2 of the best games that we've had in a very, very long time. But, some other games that stood out to me quite a bit. I think certainly that Kansas-Arkansas game in the Liberty Bowl was just unbelievable. Obviously, Arkansas goes up early, but Kansas storms back, gets it to 3 overtimes, goes to a 2-point shootout. Just an unbelievable performance for Kansas in their first bowl game, by the way, since 2009. So obviously we're very, very excited to be there. There were a bunch of others too. Gosh, they're all like blending together in my mind right now because obviously we had so many close games as well. Just multiple games that were decided by 1 or 2 points over the course. I know that SMU lost a bowl game to BYU. That was a really, really close competitive game as well. So great bowl season, I think, overall, and I think a fitting end to the college football season.
Yeah, you were talking about that. The Liberty Bowl, it was pretty back and forth. I think Adam and I are going to agree on this one. Florida State and Oklahoma.
Yep.
Definitely.
Oh yeah, Chris. Yep.
Florida State comes out right away, marching down the field, gets 3 points, and then Oklahoma takes over. It was like 14-3 at the half, and I'm thinking to myself, this is just like 2016 when we took on Ole Miss down there in the Citrus Bowl. We're going to play catch up, and it just Florida State was. It reminded me of the the Florida State-Florida game. Just like one touchdown here, Florida scored, Florida State scored, back and forth, back and forth until we hit that game-winner field goal. And hey, I guess I got a lot of Cheez-Its for the rest of the year.
No, it was a great game. I think that and Oklahoma needed that kind of moment right after obviously going 6-6, and ultimately, yes, they did finish with a losing record. They did lose the game after Florida State managed to pull it off, but I think they have to feel really good about playing that well against a top 15 opponent, going on the road, the first bowl game, of course, under Brent Venables, and it was a 6-7 season, but I think that this is exactly the kind of performance that Oklahoma fans were hoping for when they did come up with that bowl matchup.
Yeah, and this is also good for Florida State because we haven't had a 10-win season since Jimbo, and then basically now everybody's coming back, George. So I don't want to say to Clemson, if there's any Clemson fans out here, you better watch out. You better not cry because
you just put the jinx on your team, buddy.
Hey, I'm really impressed by Mike. I was one of these critics like Mike needs to go. Bringing Bob Stoops, bringing Boomer Bob, bringing everybody else, call Jimbo, get him back in here, But I like Mike. I think I think he knows what's going on now, and I think he's it had to take that COVID year was a bad year for him, and everybody was not giving him any credit. But I think after all this COVID stuff, I think he got it on the right track, and I feel like Clemson, who basically shit the bed in the Orange Bowl. I think that was Miami Hurricanes instead of Clemson playing against Tennessee. I feel like the ACC is wide open now, and I think Florida State could be really the one that could be the quietness to come up and play each other in the ACC title game.
No, and I think that one part of that too, right, is you look back at whenever even Willie Taggart took over after Jimbo Fisher. I think they were just so behind from an offensive line perspective. That's something that can't be fixed in 1 or 2 years. That's something that's a 3, 4, 5 year process to fix. I think the COVID year was in some ways a blessing to Florida State because they were able to kind of bring guys back. They were able to use that sort of shortened year as an opportunity to grow. And now finally, I Mike Norvell has had a lot of success as a head coach, obviously during his time at Memphis, was a great offensive coordinator at Arizona State as well. And I think he absolutely has this program heading in the right direction.
George, go ahead.
Well, Chris, to close out your Florida State part, he almost lost that locker room at some point. That locker room was close to turning the other direction. We even talked about that. So, but to get back to the other bowl games, it's just great to see teams like Ohio State had no right being there. Ohio State got in there because they were just Ohio State, and that's what the committee's going to do. They couldn't get Alabama, they couldn't get Clemson. They're like, we need to get somebody, and they chose Ohio State. They set Ohio State up those last couple weeks of the polls to slide into that spot. And I was glad to see the fact that, Georgia, who struggled last year, 2 years before, and we were talking about them last year, not knowing what that season was going to bring, come back on Ohio State. Ohio State played a lot of consecutive home games, and I really, really think that pumped up their numbers to a greater point than they really were.
Yeah, the Big Ten was so interesting this year because there was so much the haves and the have-nots. There were 3 teams in the top 10, and that was kind of it. You kind of had this huge gap between the top and the bottom. I think that exposed itself in some ways with Michigan as well. Obviously, just such a huge gap between them and maybe everybody else that they were playing. And actually, the funny thing heading into the game yesterday was that Penn State and Utah, Penn State hadn't beaten a single ranked team to get to 10 wins just because of the way that the Big Ten had been set up. So, I think that for Ohio State, right, like they kind of played a 1-game season, and that one game didn't go the way that anybody thought it was going to go, right? They lose 45-23 to Michigan. And, I think credit to them for kind of stepping back up and getting themselves ready for the moment. They played a great game against Georgia and had an opportunity to win that game. But, I think that one thing that's going to be interesting heading forward is, obviously in the SEC week to week, it's so difficult. Even actually, if you look at a lot of the ratings this year, the Big 12 week to week, they were all top 62 teams in the country. In the Big Ten, you kind of had this group of top and these group of have-nots, and you have a team like Purdue playing in the Big Ten West in the Big Ten championship game, right? So I think it's going to be an interesting question heading forward for Ohio State and Michigan. How do you prepare yourselves a little bit better for prime time when you kind of aren't necessarily prepared outside of that one game by your conference?
Well, 2024 is coming, and you're bringing two teams in from the Pac-10. So you're gonna give a little more with the USC, and who was the other one? Washington?
UCLA.
UCLA, that's right. To the two California teams. So you're gonna embed a little more competition into those divisions, and there's gonna have to be some type of realignment.
Definitely.
I agree. And back to Ohio State, George, I saw them to take on Penn State. I was up in State College, and I wasn't impressed by Ohio State, with their quarterback. I thought he was throwing things against the wall and see what it sticks, and the only reason why he was good because he had good wide receivers around him. Now we'll see next year if Harrison Jr. goes or whoever, who they step up as a wide receiver. What does he look like next year? He's not going to look like Dan Marino. I think I think he might be a middle of the pack quarterback.
Well, and so CJ Stroud's going to actually be going to the draft this year.
Okay,
so they're gonna have most likely their backups. Kyle McCord is going to be stepping in, and the good thing for them is that they kind of had a generation shift at wide receiver last year, right? They had Garrett Wilson head to the NFL, Chris Olave head to the NFL. Jackson Smith-Njigba was supposed to be the guy who stepped up, but he missed basically the entire season with some injuries. So Marvin Harrison will be back next year. Emeka Egbuka will be back. It's going to be a different look Ohio State team, though. I think that they're probably going to try to get a little bit more dynamic in the running game. I don't think that they can rely on just almost being a pass-only team as much as they have. And certainly they need to continue to improve defensively, because you saw in that Michigan game and even at the end of that Georgia game that that secondary can get got. And I think that they need to find ways to be better if they're going to win some of these big games.
Exactly. Adam, you got a question?
Yeah. One game that I was really impressed with yesterday was the Cotton Bowl. What Tulane did, taking down the Heisman Trophy winner, Caleb Williams, and USC with Lincoln Riley. Wow, I didn't expect that. But getting back to Florida State, Jordan Travis had an incredible season this year down in Tallahassee. And people have said he could be a Heisman Trophy contender next year. He joined 3 elite quarterbacks in Tallahassee this year with his records. And all 3 of those gentlemen won the Heisman. So I'll ask you, you think Jordan Travis has a shot next year to claim the Heisman Trophy in New York City? Because after what I saw this year, I'm going to say, yeah.
No, I mean, I think that it's going to be a very open race next year, right? We're going to lose Bryce Young to the NFL. We're going to do all that sort of stuff. And so I think that I think that there is an opening. It's very difficult to win back-to-back Heisman. So, Caleb Williams will have a chance, but I think it's going to be pretty difficult. CJ Stroud, like I mentioned, off to the NFL. Stetson Bennett and Max Duggan, the other 2 Heisman finalists, are going to be off to the NFL. So I think it will be open. If Florida State is able to come out and win the ACC, I think that he has a chance to be a finalist for sure. Now, there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the country right now. There's a lot of good players in the country right now. But, Jordan Travis could certainly be one of the ones who has an opportunity to be there at the end.
Hey, man, you got a question?
Yes, I do. So, first of all, those 2 playoff games were the best and most competitive playoff games I've ever seen in this playoff era. And even going back to the BCS era, I mean, you've had a lot of lopsided wins and everything. So that made my New Year's Eve just within that. And then with Ohio State literally kicking the ball, missing it right when the ball dropped. I mean, that was just unbelievable. So, but here's my 2 questions. First of all, what do you think of those 2 very competitive games, the playoff games? And second, who do you think has a better chance of winning? Who do you think has a better defense in the national championship game with TCU versus Georgia?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, I mean, I think that, yes, these are 2 of the best games that we've seen, obviously, in the college football playoff. The only one really that even comes close to either of these games would probably be that Rose Bowl back in 2017, the Georgia versus Oklahoma comeback game. But that's probably it, right? I mean, I don't think that there's been another game that's really even been all that close to these 2 games that we got this weekend. So unbelievable year. It's been very difficult to kind of see 2 great games in one year. Usually we have 1 blowout and maybe 1 slightly more competitive game. So I think it's huge for the sport that we were able to see such close games right there. And I think that, going into this national championship game, it's going to be a really competitive game. Obviously, Georgia comes in as 13-point favorites, which is one of the biggest lines that we've ever seen in a national championship game. But one thing I will mention is the last game that was a double-digit line heading into the title game was 2002. When Ohio State played against Miami and came in as big underdogs and ended up shocking the Hurricanes on the last play of the game. Now, we can get into conversations about the controversial final call of the game that year, but ultimately Ohio State did win, and it was their first national championship in 30 years and really set off a new era of success. So heading into this one, obviously I think Georgia has to be considered the favorites. I wouldn't have them as 13-point favorites, but probably something like 6-point favorites. I think that the question for this game is ultimately going to be, what does TCU do to stop Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington at tight end? This is the best tight end duo we've seen in college football probably since Iowa had TJ Hawkinson and Noah Fant on the same offense a couple of years ago. And these guys might be even better than those 2 guys, which is really saying something. They were both first-round picks. And so I think that TCU doesn't necessarily have obvious personnel to be able to match up with those tight ends. But, I think the same kind of goes the other direction. I'm going to be curious kind of the matchup with Quentin Johnston at receiver, who's going to be a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, against Keely Ringo and some of those Georgia defensive backs that struggled against Ohio State. So, Georgia's got the better defense for sure, but I think that TCU can do a lot of things offensively to put them in tough positions. And ultimately, I think it's going to be a really competitive game.
And then just one last question. With both of those universities, TCU and Georgia, TCU has not won a national championship in 85 years. Last time they won it was back in 1938 against Carnegie Mellon. Georgia would become the first back-to-back champion since Alabama did it in 2011, 2012. So what would it mean for both of those universities, TCU to win and Georgia to win?
Yeah, it's such a good question. I think that, for Georgia, it took 41 years, right, in between national championships. Their one before that was in 1980. And I think that this was always the program that we were waiting to go and do this, to be the team that steps up. We wondered, why is Georgia not Florida? Why is Georgia not Alabama? Why is this not a team that competes consistently for national championships? So I think that this steps into a situation where we get to talk about Georgia as the Alabama, as the Ohio State, as one of those nationally competitive dominant teams. And Georgia's never been that program before. So I think that that's a huge testament to what they're doing there. And for TCU, I mean, look, this is the unlikeliest team to play in a national championship game in a very long time, maybe ever. I think that there's a legitimate case that it's the most surprising ever. Obviously, they were 5-7 last year, missed a bowl game, and they made an external hire in Sonny Dykes. So, very, very unexpected. They were picked 7th in their own conference. I think the criticism right now with TCU and really with this new Big 12 is that there isn't a team capable of winning a national championship. Well, that can change this week, right? If TCU goes and wins the national championship, I think that fundamentally changes the way we look at that program. I think that fundamentally changes the way we look at this conference when Texas and Oklahoma leave. And I think that it completely changed the way maybe that we look at the middle class of college football as well. So huge stakes on the line here for both of these programs. And I think that whoever wins this game, it's going to be transformative to what they are long-term.
That's true. Well, Sheehan, thank you so much for coming on. Enjoy your trip to California if you're going to the national championship game, and hopefully the weather's great out there, and keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, man.
Yes,
Thanks, man. See you.
Yes, sir.
All right, but that's really good to have him from the CBS Sports. Sheehan Jahama. I think I said it right, or probably bad. Yeah. Did I check my swing? No. The umpire, George, goes, "You're out."
Chris, that was a negative. Strike 1 and 2.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that was great to talk about little college football bowl games, and they got 2 more coming up. 1 more coming up, on January 9th, and then we're done with college football until all the bowl media days in July. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I could talk all night about those 2 playoff games.
Amen.
I mean, those were just. I mean, I could not go to bed until like 2:30 in the morning because those games were just. First of all, I picked TCU to win. I picked Georgia to win.
Yes,
okay, and just the way they won, it was such like it came down to the last play for both games, and so close. And the Georgia Ohio State game, I've never had it to where the playoff game ended right when the ball dropped. I mean, that was just absolutely unbelievable. The finish was unbelievable. I saw on YouTube the reaction of the Georgia fans, and I mean, it was just unbelievable, just everything. So, I mean, I could talk all night about it, but I mean, I know we don't have that kind of time. But but those 2 playoff games will go down in the history books for decades. People will remember them, and all that. So I'm hoping that the national championship game is just as good.
Exactly. So let's bring in Zach McKennell, who he's part of the Blue Bloods. I think George didn't unmute himself. Oh my God! So let's bring in Zach here. Hey Zach, how you doing?
How you guys doing, man? Appreciate all y'all having me.
Oh, no problem. Thank you so much for coming on. We talked to Luciano about the other side of the football. Let's talk about more about the FBS title game with North Dakota State. Where are you located right now?
Based out of Mobile, Alabama. So I'll be headed over to Frisco on Thursday night.
Okay, that's cool. Nice. So, what's your take on this game here? North Dakota State is still the dynasty is still going on. There's no JMU anymore because they're in the Sun Belt, and I was very impressed by the way they did this year in the Sun Belt. I was like, we saw that a lot here in this area in the CAA. So, can North Dakota State win this title and bring it back home to Frisco and have everybody down and from Frisco? And this is almost like a home game.
It is. I mean, North Dakota. There's a running joke in the FCS community that North Dakota State fans, their second homes are in Frisco, because I mean, this is their 10th appearance in the past 12 seasons. They're undefeated in FCS national title games. I mean, the history is there. I don't. I really think at any level of sports, you will be hard pressed to find a better dynasty than what North Dakota State's put together. 9-0 in national title games, and they've done it with 3 different head coaches at multiple quarterbacks against multiple different opponents in different eras, technically, of FCS football. As the Georgia Southerns, the James Madisons, the Sam Houston States have come and gone, the thing that's remained the same is North Dakota State absolutely dominating the FCS. But it's kind of interesting because this is the first time I think we've had a rivalry of the magnitude of this. I mean, this is like Alabama, Auburn, Ohio State, Michigan facing off in the national title game. Now, we almost got that at the FBS level, but we have that at the FCS level, and the storylines are endless. South Dakota State's never beaten North Dakota State in the postseason, and South Dakota State's looking for their 4th straight win over North Dakota State. So something has to give this upcoming Sunday in Frisco.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with you. And they played each other earlier this year, and I was talking to Coach from North Dakota State last week. They only had 4.4 yards a carry, and normally North Dakota State is a running type team because last year they ran all over Montana State like nobody's business last year. So I guess they got to get that running game involved.
It's going to be tough because in the first matchup, Tamarick Williams was healthy. Hunter Lipke was healthy. Hunter Lipke being an All-American fullback. Those guys are probably not going to play. Tamarick Williams has a small chance, but it's looking very doubtful right now. But it's just, when I look at South Dakota State, they are the worst type of matchup for what North Dakota State wants to do. They're extremely strong in the defensive line. They have 2 linebackers that excel at playing sideline to sideline. They're great in the run game. And what it does is they put the game on Cam Miller. Now, Cam Miller did have a solid performance against South Dakota State in the first matchup. But if you remember, that Incarnate Word game was tough to watch. 5 yards passing, 1 for 12. That's not going to win you the national championship this upcoming weekend. And I think the Jacks got up on the Bison that first game. They have the number 1 rushing defense in the country, only about 83 yards per game allowed. Caleb Sanders and Reese Winkleman have been unblockable at times. Adam Bach's healthy. And I think if you're looking for what the potential for South Dakota State is, look no further than what they did to Montana State. Montana State was putting up almost 350 yards per game on the ground. They held them to less than 2 yards per carry, 60 total yards of rushing in the semifinal matchup. The potential is through the roof for South Dakota State. So I just think they're defensively a really bad matchup for North Dakota State right now.
Let's go with Adam first. Adam.
Yeah, let's talk about these FCS playoffs as a whole. You saw 5 teams from the CAA. You had Sacramento State, Incarnate Word. Just what was your overall take on when the bracket was released? And didn't see teams like Incarnate Word, as a national seed, Sacramento State as a national seed. I thought that was pretty cool, especially Incarnate Word, the new team in the Southland Conference, and you had teams like Sam Houston State, Abilene Christian. You had all those good teams, but what's your take overall on these FCS playoffs, Zach?
I thought the seeding was very interesting. One, I think, now hindsight's always 2020. It worked out at the end, North Dakota State, South Dakota State being here. But if you were taking a blind resume, I had a real big problem with North Dakota State getting the 3 seed. I thought Sanford had a better resume. I thought potentially Montana State had a better resume. And I think, ultimately it played itself out. But I thought that was very interesting because that changes a lot. If North Dakota State has to travel in the semifinal round or something like that, that change a lot. Just look at William and Mary. Roland, they have to go up to Bozeman and they just get bulldozed in Bozeman with Montana State. But Incarnate Word and Sanford were the two most interesting seeds to me. You have Incarnate Word, who just came on the scene a handful of years ago. They lose their coach, a Jerry Rice Award winner in Cameron Ward. They go get a transfer from Nicholls State and Lindsey Scott, who the previous year did not throw for over 2,500 yards. And he becomes the best quarterback in college football with a first-year head coach in G.J. Kinney, who now is moving on to Texas State. That program and their ability to develop talent and emerge as a contender on the national FCS scale with all the distractions, all the things they've had to overcome, that to me, in my opinion, has been the most overlooked story in terms of national FCS coverage. And then for Sanford, Chris Hatcher was on the hot seat going into this year. Lose their quarterback. They lose multiple wide receivers. Montreal Washington's doing a hell of a job for the Broncos. They go to the JUCO level, find Michael Hires out of nowhere, and he sets the NCAA record for completion percentage in a season, completing almost 80% of his passes, and is a Walter Payton Award finalist. Those two teams came out of absolutely nowhere, and I think it really shows some parity being developed in terms of the teams under North Dakota State and South Dakota State, because everyone was worried with James Madison, Sam Houston State, Jacksonville State all leaving, who's going to step up and replace those teams. But you have the Incarnate Word, you have the Sanfords that have really started developing some talent, even the William and Marys, because they have not been on the national stage in a long time too. And Mike London has done a great job getting them their first 10-win season in school history.
Yeah, we like Mike London. We had him on during the summer, George, and he's a down to earth coach. And it's funny, what a coach who used to be a police officer in Richmond, Virginia.
Yep.
It's fascinating. Like he realized that wasn't his profession. And he found something that he's doing well in, and I hope he keeps William and Mary going the right way, because Coach Larry Cotton had that team going really well for 30 years.
I think his potential's through the roof. Now, there are rumors that defensive coordinator Vincent Brown is going to be the next head coach at North Carolina A&T, and Vincent Brown's been his associate head coach, defensive coordinator all the way back to his Howard days. So it'll be real interesting to see how he replaces him. But I can't foresee William and Mary taking a large step back moving forward.
Yeah. George, you got anything for Zach?
I just want to say, Zach, isn't it kind of interesting? Team out of North Dakota and South Dakota going down to Frisco, Texas. Keep them up north, let them play outside, and just put a big old mountain game on out in the open air.
I agree with you. The contract with Frisco has taken a lot of heat in the FCS community, but when it was negotiated, you have to think when that contract was negotiated, FCS football wasn't generating any buzz, kind of like it's been developing over these past few seasons. So they locked it in long term. It's the prime example of kind of out negotiating yourself, where you sign way too of a long-term deal. Because in my opinion, it's going to sell out. The attendance is going to be outrageous. The viewership on ABC, I really do think it's going to push over 2 million. And if you could have this game and put it in Minneapolis, they put at least 40K in that stadium, in my opinion. And if you can, or even in KC, put it in Arrowhead, could you imagine the national coverage that we get? They just kind of got locked into a crappy contract. I'm going to be very interested to see what cities do place a bid when that contract runs out in Frisco.
Yeah, I think
this turned around.
Yeah, moving around. That'll be cool. You get places like different places to host it. You get, like I said, Kansas City one year, and next year, Minnesota. Maybe over here on the East Coast, maybe, MetLife Stadium. They could do it. They could play in the cold. They've done it with the Super Bowl, and it wasn't really well. But
have it in Foxborough, or even here, or even Charlotte. The Bank of America Stadium. I think it'd be 50-50. Half for North Dakota State, half for South Dakota State. And I mean, Charlotte, North Carolina is a beautiful city. So, why not?
Why not?
Yeah, but those two teams deserve to play someplace between North Dakota
Oh, yeah.
and South Dakota and grid it out.
Yeah.
Minus 15 with a blizzard, and basically,
Oh, Chris, yes.
that would be great. That's like old fashioned football, you know,
The
or like
running game and the running game and the throwing game would be questionable.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was for 3-0 or 2-0, you know, or you know, because it's a safety, you know, or you know.
Yep.
Soldier
Well,
Field in Chicago. I mean, it's cold enough that time of the year.
I know it's been cold since Thanksgiving, so they're used to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, Zach. Well, let me let you go. Thanks so much for coming on, and good luck with your with the Blue Bloods. We'll get you on another time down the road, and we'll talk more. Okay.
Appreciate you guys having me. All y'all have a great one.
All right,
Thank
man.
you, sir.
Talk to you soon.
Safe travels, Zach.
All right. All right, that's Zach McKinnell, who covers the SBS for the Blue Bloods here. So let's bring in, so it's the top of the hour or 5 minutes after 8 o'clock. It sounds like George Carlin here. 5 minutes after 8 o'clock here. Yeah. Thanks for logging in. This is your Sports Talk with Chris Heidel here. Today's date, January 3rd, 2023. Yeah, it's getting pretty interesting. We're off to a new year, first our show of the year after finishing up back before Christmas. So, so what's coming up in 2 minutes? We'll get the voice of the Charlotte Checkers. They're going to be taking on Hershey Bears this weekend up in Hershey, and then we'll dive into some college bowling. Mount St. Mary's is the Mount. They're heading out to Vegas for a Vegas bowling tournament they're hosting, and Vanderbilt coach Williamson will be joining us probably from Las Vegas, and then we'll get ourselves around 8:30. Let's see what we got on 8:30 here. We got the Baltimore Blast soccer goalie who he's the goalie coach for Johns Hopkins, William Benuin, who will be joining us at 8:30. And then we'll talk more about what happened yesterday in Cincinnati. So let's move on to let's keep going here. If you guys are listening to us or watching us, if you want to email us, you can always send an email to the show. And, if you have any questions, concerns, or comments, you can email us at herbertsonradio@gmail.com. And then you could actually go on our website anytime. You can watch, you can see some of the stuff I'm updating, like photos and videos. And, last year we had a chance to interview some Olympians. So that was pretty cool. From the Olympics. So let's bring in TJ Schultz, who is the voice of the Checkers of Charlotte. They'll be heading up to Hershey this weekend. So, hey, TJ, how you doing?
Good, guys. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Sorry about your flight plan. So, are you back on schedule for tomorrow? Or
yeah, we're set. We're ready to go. Fortunately, we've been on the road for a little bit, so it's kind of nice. We had Cleveland right there on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So knocked those out. And now Wilkes-Barre, Scranton tomorrow night and Friday. And then, of course, Hershey on Saturday to wrap up that PA trip before coming home.
Yeah. Did you get stuck with the airport with all this stuff going on from last week's debacle with Southwest?
No, fortunately, we fly commercial just like anybody else. So fortunately, we just kind of dodged all the bullets. I don't really know how. I don't know if it was a stroke of luck. Boy, I guess at 8 o'clock my brain shuts down. But I don't know if it was just a stroke of luck or what it might have been. But we're all good. No lost luggage. I think it's being in Charlotte, flying out of American. Maybe that helped us dodge any problems. I know Southwest was kind of the big culprits this holiday season with the travel. So we're all good. We're where we need to be. We got everything we got.
Yeah, you're actually going home to Pennsylvania. You started your broadcaster career up in that area, so that's pretty cool. You're going back home.
Yeah, I started my whole life in Pennsylvania. Actually, I lived my first 29 years of life in Pennsylvania before kind of chasing the broadcasting dream all over the country, and it took me away from Pennsylvania. But it's just kind of funny now that I'm here in Charlotte and I get the opportunity to go back to not only Pennsylvania, the state itself, but literally to the city where I lived when I last left, which is Allentown, where the Lehigh Valley Phantoms are. That's where I got started as an intern with them. So it's it always comes full circle. It's such a small hockey world. It's one of the added bonuses of getting on the road and travel, because it can kind of be grueling when you travel and things like that. So we're, it's one of those things where getting to go home, I don't want to say for free because the Checkers are paying for it, but getting the opportunity to go home and see some friends on a work trip is always nice.
Yeah, and you get up there, maybe get somebody to get some home cooking real quick. Like, hey, you want some home? Yeah, I'll stop by.
Exactly right. That's exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about this trip up here. is Charlotte? Who are they? What are you guys affiliated with now? Last time we had you guys on, you were with the Blackhawks, and now, or is it still the Golden Knights? What's the
Last time I think I was on, we had the dual affiliation with Florida and the Seattle Kraken. Now it's just the Florida Panthers outright, as the Kraken have moved their operations out to California and Coachella Valley. So it's just the Florida Panthers right now, and this is the second year of that affiliation with the Florida Panthers, the first year of it being solo.
Oh, that's cool. Nice.
Yeah. It's nice. It's it's a convenient windfall for us in terms of getting players, and the way that they operate in the front office and the way their hockey ops operates. They're always thinking of us in terms of this offseason, who to sign to just AHL deals, who to sign to two-way deals, so that way we can get the best talent possible down here at the AHL level when they don't fit in up at the NHL level. So they really think of us. A lot of teams, I shouldn't say a lot of teams, but a few teams, sometimes they treat their AHL affiliate as just a dumping ground or just somewhere to throw guys that just don't fit or mesh in with the NHL squad. They don't really think in long-term thinking ahead, a few steps ahead in terms of the AHL squad. Unfortunately, we're very lucky that Florida does that, and they think about us and putting their high draft picks down here who might just need a little bit of seasoning, or putting some of those older guys who are at the end of their careers but still have a lot in the tank that can contribute at the AHL level. Riley Nash is a perfect example of that. So they really treat us well.
Yeah. George, do you have a question? Because I know did you go to a lot of hockey games when you were up in Connecticut? Did you go to a lot of games, or did you ever went to a hockey game? Or you make me look like you're just staring at me.
Really, Chris? That's a question? Of course I went. Yeah. I had the Wolfpack in my backyard. Okay. I had the Whale before they headed down south down to North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
So
these guys?
Oh, yes. Yes. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, sir.
Yep. So, TJ, Cam Morrison, I was looking through the roster here, and what's happened to him?
So Cam Morrison started the year in the ECHL with the Florida Everblades, our other affiliate, and this is a guy that spent all of last year in the AHL. He certainly has the talent. They wanted to start him in the ECHL. I think it's simply because of just depth. He was one of those guys that was the odd man out. I mean, you're not going to really play him over a Zach Dalpe or a Riley Nash or a Justin Sordiff, one of the younger guys in the case of Sordiff, who's a second-round draft pick of the Florida Panthers. But he's getting his opportunity here due to some injuries at the NHL level that, of course, that forces a lot of call-ups. We lost Chris Tierney and Zach Dalpe up to the NHL recently. Sure. So it opens up some spots. And Cam Morrison played in, I think, his third game of the year on New Year's Day, ended up getting his first goal in the American Hockey League this season, and he's starting to really mesh. He's a good fourth-line player for us, knows how to play physical. He's a big body, and it's a guy that he's instantly become – there was a slew of ECHL call-ups from Dominic Franco to – Cam Morrison to a couple other guys that came up, and really the first one who jumped off of the paper that when you're watching the game going, wow, okay, he fits in really well, it was Cam Morrison. And that obviously is a testament to his AHL experience that he's had in his time before coming into the Florida Panthers organization. So he's starting to really get used to this AHL level this season and kind of shake off the rust from the start of the year. But we'll see. Does that earn him a permanent spot? The Checkers are going to get a lot of bodies back here eventually once the Florida Panthers get healthy. Everything kind of falls back down. Will he stay up in the American Hockey League? That's for the head coaching staff to kind of decide. But scoring, a goal in his first 3 games here in the American Hockey League this year, it's certainly making a case.
Yeah. I used to cover him a lot when he was here at Notre Dame.
Oh, that's cool.
And he was just that guy that you can count on in a tough spot to score or make something happen. So I was just kind of curious, trying to run through the stats, and I wasn't able to find too much information on him. But thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I just pulled it up here. He's played in 5 games for the Checkers this year, not 3. But, it's one of those things where if you look at his numbers from the Everblades earlier this year, 5 goals, 8 assists for 13 points in 16 games. I mean, that just screams I'm not an ECHL player. I belong in the AHL, and coming up here and getting a goal in 20% of the games that he's played is certainly a start. I mean, this is a guy that put up 14 points in the American Hockey League last year for Rockford, and he certainly has the talent. And like you said, he's young. This is just his third professional year, so he'll continue to develop. He might just be one of those guys that's a late bloomer that when he hits his mid-20s, all of a sudden just kind of takes off. You never know how these things work out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And I was just looking at the roster. You have a kid from Chevy Chase, Maryland. That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. Is that Patrick Giles, right?
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't know Maryland has some people that play hockey.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's not lacrosse.
Yeah, exactly.
At 6'5", 230-ish pounds, I'm pretty sure he played lacrosse in high school and in college as well. He ended up going to Boston College for his collegiate hockey career. And Patty's a good kid. He just signed a 2-way deal with the Florida Panthers this offseason. He signed an entry-level contract with them last year, but he had a really good prospects camp this year. He was easily one of the standout stars, and he's having a decent season. I mean, he's starting to turn out some points, a little slow out of the blocks, which we saw him for probably 10, 15 games last year. At the end of the year, he finished up his college career. Then he came over to the Checkers to start getting used to the pro game. We saw him in like 10, 12, maybe 15 games. And you could kind of see he was there. He was a little raw. And when he burst onto the scene at this prospects tournament, which was going up against the Hurricanes, the Lightning, the Predators, all four organizations, including the Panthers, all sent their best prospects out there to just kind of a little tune-up game before training camp. And he was easily head and shoulders above everyone else on the ice. And here he is now. He's got 6 points in 30 games, and he's someone who's certainly a big piece. And I mean that both metaphorically and literally at 6'5", and he's young at 23 years old. So he's going to be a big piece to this Charlotte Checkers / Florida Panthers organization in years to come. So go Maryland.
Yeah, maybe we could get him on the program. Maybe we could work with you if it's a Tuesday night like this, and you're not playing, and maybe he could probably come on and talk about it, because that's pretty cool for the state of Maryland that there's a kid who's in the American Hockey League who basically might be the first. I don't think there's a lot of Marylanders in the National Hockey League. That's pretty cool.
I can look that up for you. I'll send you an email after the show, because I do have the ability to let you know that. But I was just kind of digging through his stats. I can certainly help you out with any kind of connections there. But he went to Landon School, which is the Landon
it's around DC. Yeah,
Bethesda area. So that's where he went to high school, and then from there started playing junior hockey. And anybody who knows anything about hockey in the junior game, that's when you're starting to leave home. You're not playing in your backyard. You're not playing for your high school that you grew up thinking you'd be going to. You're going away. So, and that's exactly what he did. He ended up going away and then landed in Boston College. Now he's a pro hockey player in the American Hockey League with us.
That's awesome. And Adam is actually, are you 4 hours away from Charlotte?
I'm about 3 hours away from you, TJ. I'm here in the Smoky Mountains, North Carolina. I'm near Asheville. So
okay. I just drove through there today. I was coming back. Nice.
All right.
Cool.
Area. Cool. So I'll ask you this. With the Checkers and the Hurricanes, would you say North Carolina is a hockey state? I mean, we Tar Heels are, we have some other sports that are well known, but would you consider North Carolina to be a hockey state as well?
Yeah, and I think if you would have asked me that question 10 years ago, I think I would have had a very different answer for you. But at this point in time, with not only the Hurricanes and with us, the Checkers, at the higher levels of hockey, but you talk about the Carolina Thunderbirds and the FPHL, which is basically single A hockey. Same thing with the Fayetteville Marksmen in Fayetteville, North Carolina, another single A team. You're starting to see more and more influence from these teams on the younger kids, and that's what really makes it a hockey state, right? You have to get the kids involved, because once the kids are starting to play, that's when things become it becomes a hockey state. It becomes a full movement going forward. I would absolutely say that. And I can talk about it from a unique perspective in the sense that in just the Charlotte market, you have NBA, you have MLS, you have NFL, you have AAA baseball, and you have us. And we get the support, we get the crowds, we get the media attention, just like any of the other teams, because it's such an interest to the fans out there. Are the Panthers getting more media requests for conversations with their head coach? Absolutely. especially with the year that the Carolina Panthers have gone through this year, they've had a lot of media requests. They're still going to be the upper echelon, right? Like the Hornets are still getting a little bit more attention. But when we can, pack 7,000 in our barn on a Wednesday before the Christmas holiday, that screams this is a hockey market. And as much as I would love to say, that it was just the Carolina Hurricanes that did that or something like that, I do think they were the linchpin. Once you come down here and you get the NHL franchise in a state, it starts to kind of spread. It's really been the community efforts from all of the teams across the board, all of the hockey teams, because when you start getting involved in the schools, you start bringing kids out to games, they want to start playing, and you really start teaching people a new game. The other good side is the fact of how many Northerners are moving into North Carolina every single year. And myself, Pennsylvania,
New Hampshire.
Yeah, New Hampshire.
New York, Connecticut.
York. Exactly, Connecticut. So with all the people coming down too, they already have been endeared to the game, and they want to watch it some more, and they become your season ticket holders because it's a great value. They become your season ticket holders because it's fun, because the team has been so competitive. They won the Calder Cup just a few years ago. I have the mini Calder Cup behind me over my left shoulder here.
That's cool.
So yeah, it's definitely becoming a hockey state.
Yeah, that's awesome. TJ, maybe I might talk to Zach, the guy up at Hershey. Maybe I take a ride up there. I'm only like an hour and a half away, from Hershey. Maybe on a good day.
Hey, Zach's
maybe, if the weather's good on Saturday, maybe I make a truck up there and maybe see you guys before the game, and maybe talk to Patrick and do something there. Let me talk to Hershey and see what I could do. But if not, we'll work something out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let me know. We're going to be coming back up that way again, because this will be our fourth game against Hershey this year, and I believe it's been 2 here and 2 there.
Okay.
So we'll still have 2 more games up that way. We have a whole bunch more to knock out with Lehigh Valley and Wilkes-Barre as well. So we're going to be up in that Eastern Pennsylvania area a lot. We're going to be up in Springfield again too, Hartford again too, Bridgeport. So we're not even at the halfway part of the season. So we got a lot more coming up.
Exactly. Well, TJ, have a great trip back home, and this week drive carefully, and hopefully the weather's great up in the PA, and I hope to see you Saturday. If not, we'll work on something down the road.
Awesome, guys. Thank you so much for having me. Take care. Have a great night.
All right, man.
Thanks,
Talk to you soon.
Thanks, TJ.
All right, bud. See you. It's TJ Chillett, who is the Director of Broadcasting and Corporate Services of the Checkers in the beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina. And they play at the Bojangles Center, where they used to have the Hornets used to play.
Yep, that's right, Chris. That's right.
Yeah. So they used to call it the Charlotte Coliseum, right? That was the name.
Yeah, that was the original Charlotte Coliseum. That's right. Yep, that's right.
So speaking of, let's talk about switching gears here. Next week here on the program, I talked to today, Adam and George. I talked to Parker Bone III on video chat, because there was a well-known bowler in Dave Davis that passed away last week during the holiday season, and we're going to talk to him. And Mike Albee will be joining us as well, because Mike, Mike bowled for a title against Dave Davis in 1980. So when Mike was a young kid out on tour, we'll play that stuff. That's next Tuesday night here on Sports Talk with Chris Heidel and everybody here, starting at 7. So let's move in. Let's get ready for some college bowling. Mount St. Mary's, the Mount, is heading out to Vegas, where a lot of high rolling out there. They have the time trials going on this week.
That's right. It's
Kyle's actually bowling right now. Yep. George in the U.S. time trials.
AJ Johnson's out there too.
And college takes over, and Vanderbilt's out there bowling against the Mount, and it's a big event, because all the good college teams like Nebraska and Vanderbilt and the Eastern Shore of Maryland, Maryland Eastern Shore, all the good bowlers and the teams are heading out there, and it's actually on Bowl TV.
Yes, it is. It's called, and that's where you can find the PBA tour this year, the PWBA tour. It's called. It may cost a pretty penny, but
hey, we're going to talk to Tom about that. Maybe we get a free one. How about that?
Yeah, why not? Why not, Chris? I mean,
okay, buddy, go ahead. Hey, free is my middle name. Free. So let's bring in Coach Williamson here, who is out there. I think he's out there in Vegas. So, hey, Coach John, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
How's the
Yeah.
weather in Vegas? You guys doing great with the weather? Because I know
Uh,
back here it's crappy. Yeah.
Well, I mean, before I left Nashville, I left at 6 a.m. It was 70 degrees, and it's 50 here. But
You're like,
I mean,
really?
it's not raining, so that's I guess a bonus.
Yeah. So talk about this big event. I was trying to get Coach from the Mount on tonight, but he's bowling he bowls on Tuesday night in league, and a lot of people don't realize a lot of you guys bowl in league while being coaches and all that stuff. And just talk about the trip out there. It's a big event. It's going to be on Bowl TV. I guess that there will be broadcasting, and this is what, the fourth year
It would be the fourth year, but it's the third year because of COVID.
Okay.
1 year was canceled. This is a big tournament. It happens right after the USA team trials, the USA Amateur Championship. So there's a lot of college players out here to begin with. They got out here. Today was the first day of actual competition. And this year is slightly bigger because it's the site of the Final Four. So as at South Point in Las Vegas. So there's a lot of the teams that haven't been here in the past that have sort of aspirations of sort of trying to get a scouting report of maybe what South Point looks like for April.
That's cool. Yeah. So this is a big event, like you said, and you have I was looking at your roster. You have a very famous lady on your roster who is and her father is a well-known bowler. Who we talked to Pete Weber last week. It wasn't like having a Ballard on your squad.
I mean, Alyssa's amazing, and her parents are I'll say, I don't know if saying they're better than Alyssa is probably a stretch, but they're very humble. They're very they're not going to stick their nose into things. They're going to let Alyssa be part of the team. They're here to help if we need it, which is really all you can ask for a parent. But it's been pretty impressive to watch Alyssa this fall, as a freshman. She plays at such her mental game is so much more advanced than an 18-year-old. She plays with the experience of having two Hall of Fame parents, and she just elevates the people around her because she never really ever gets frustrated, and that's pretty impressive to do for someone as young as she is.
And I think it's great. Let me send it over to George after I said something. It's also she has that experience because her father was on ABC's Professional Bowlers Tour, and she saw him growing up. She saw her father grow up and how he handled pressure and failures and all that stuff, and she probably learned from that. And plus her mom was a great bowler too on the ladies tour, so she did. She won a lot of majors and both are Hall of Famers. So there's I think it's really hard for anybody who's related to somebody who's like that to, you right away you see Ballard, you're like, oh, you're going to be that person, and that's a different person, that's a different name. It's not so what for the last name.
Yeah, they've done a fantastic job of letting Alyssa be Alyssa, and Alyssa sort of, I guess, she's embraced the fact that she is a Ballard, but she isn't necessarily letting that define her. And so, for us, it's just been amazing just to watch her just come in and compete. As a freshman, you don't really know what to expect of kids, with just the transition of life in this college and moving away from home and all that kind of stuff. And she's basically just sort of moved in, and she's just been, you would think she was a junior or senior just by the way she sort of handles herself.
Exactly. George, go ahead.
So, having Alyssa on the team, what are the rules around with the rules of having a parent out there possibly giving you assistance in coaching?
I mean, the limitations are at the current moment. There's a lot of talk in the NCAA about restructuring things and that kinds of stuff. But right now we have staff limits, and so they can work with Alyssa obviously and that kinds of stuff at home or whatever. But when we get to a tournament, they're not really allowed to coach her. I mean, in some ways that's hard to police because I'm not gonna take her, confiscate her phone at night and have her, her dad could be like, oh, you need to do this or this or this, over text message or whatever. But during competition, we're just allowed the NCAA coaches that are sort of on our roster. There is talk about deregulating that and increasing it out. And I mean, I think that would be a free for all of epic proportions and across the sports, but that's a different conversation. But yeah, we're limited in the number of people that we can have like assist our team.
Yeah, that's it's like I was just talking to Parker Bone today, and he was out there with his two sons and daughter, and they're bowling in the time trials, and he goes, "Well, I just told her to switch the ball and have a ball change," and I'm thinking, can you do that? Because I'm thinking like if you're trying to be in the United States, U.S. team, I thought it's like you have U.S. coaches teaching you.
Well, no, for the trials, it's basically like everybody has like their own coaches, whether it's parents, boyfriends, actual coaches or whatever. They have people assisting them, sort of like caddies in golf.
Mm-hmm.
And there's really no rules or regulation. Like you can help people regardless of, right? I mean, there's from an NCAA standpoint, we have limitations, but like the general public, like you guys could come out and tell people to change balls and move their feet and do all that kind of stuff. And there's really no limitations on that at trials.
Exactly. Adam, go ahead, bud.
Yeah. Now, Coach, we've talked about Alyssa Ballard, but there's one more lady on your team who has a connection in pro bowling, Victoria Verano. Her sister is well known. So, what's it like to have two ladies who have connections in professional bowling? Because Victoria's sister is Danielle McEwen.
Yeah, I mean, similar to the benefits of having Alyssa on the team, Victoria's done the same thing. She comes in and she handles herself like a professional. She's watched her sister for 10 years, like bowl on tour. I remember Victoria coming to college tournaments like when her mom was pushing her in a stroller. That's it sort of shows how long I've been doing this. But she's grown up doing this, watching it, seeing it. And, in some ways there's no way to replicate that. Like she's done and seen more at 17, 18 than a lot of these kids will see by the time they're 22. And so, she's come in and she's a lot like Alyssa. She's, you don't know what to expect as freshmen, but they come in and both of them have basically sort of cemented their place in the lineup. And, which is very hard to do for one freshman, let alone to have two, come in and do that. And so we're very fortunate in that regard.
That's awesome. It's great to see the tree of bowling growing, and I'm thinking about you just saying her sister bowls on the ladies professional tour. I'm thinking, man, I would love to bowl against my brother. That would be great. Yeah. Him and I are competitive, and there are some times when we bowled on against each other in rec bowling. It was kind of heated sometimes, So, but I think that must be one of those thrills that her sister will be like, maybe I can bowl against her on a title on TV. Who do they go to root for? Yeah.
Well, Victoria wants to be a pro when she gets done with school. And Danielle is much like the Ballards in that she's only offered any kind of assistance, and she's basically sort of stayed out of it. Not trying to get in the way. She also had. Not only was she is she a great professional, but she had a really good NCAA career at Fairleigh Dickinson, and she sort of came out of nowhere from the recruiting standpoint. So, Victoria was a little bit more known in the recruiting world because of her sister, and because they're a little bit more maybe experienced in the world of college bowling. But Danielle is as far as mentors, she's not a bad one to have.
That's true. It's always good to have somebody who's as a pro, and you can call them up anytime they need help, and she could help you in different ways in which she can, and maybe give you some pointers, probably.
Right. Yeah, she knows her sister inside and out. She's been around her whole life, so there's really nobody better to get insight from.
Exactly. Well, John, I know you just got there. I want you to relax. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I know the flight was, going from Nashville to Vegas is a little bit hectic some days with this weather around here. But thanks so much for coming on, and you can watch that this weekend. I think it starts January 8th, right? 8th through the 10th, and it'll be on Bowl TV.
Correct. Yeah, I appreciate you guys covering college bowling and all you do to elevate the ladies' sort of public stature. And anytime we can come on and talk about them, I'd be happy to.
All right, cool. I hope to see one of these local events here in Maryland. I think there's one around my neck of the woods. I got to see the schedule.
Okay.
Maybe I can stop by and see you guys.
Definitely. All right, guys.
All right, John. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
See you. Bye.
Yeah.
All right, that's Coach Williamson from Vanderbilt, women's professional bowlers team out there in Vanderbilt University. Their bowling team's better than the football team. So
Yeah. I mean, Chris,
come on, George, you gotta laugh. You gotta say Vanderbilt's football team. They don't go to a bowl game. They go to once in the blue moon, right?
Yeah.
Chipley's a new coach.
Yeah. Maybe George will be the coach of Vanderbilt. Bring him back.
And Chris, it's called when people think of Vanderbilt, you think of football, men's and women's basketball, college
basketball.
Baseball, but I mean, the bowling team, that lineup is solid.
Yeah, I think basketball. I think they have a coach as well known. I think they have one of the former. We saw him in the NBA. Let me see. Yeah. What's his name? I can't remember his name. Let me pull it up here. Coaches here. Jerry Stackhouse.
Yep.
Jerry Stackhouse.
Tar Heel.
Yeah, Tar Heel, and he's a coach at Vanderbilt. How interesting that is. You got Penny Hardaway in Memphis. You got Stackhouse in Vanderbilt. And that's in basketball. We just heard over the week, George, that Ed Reed is the coach down there in Florida now, a head coach of Beth Koopman University.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to see. I mean, it's nice to see like Ed Reed, getting a coaching job at Bethune-Cookman. I mean, look at what Deion Sanders did at Jackson State. It's nice to see former NFL players, NBA players,
Well,
here's college.
Here's one thing about Deion. He did a good job down at Jackson State because there's it's not Florida State. They're a good team in the the MEAC and all, and the SWAC and all that stuff. But now you're in Colorado. You're expected. You're the state school of the state of Colorado. You're expected to be in bowl games and winning games and not being 3-9 and getting slacked across the field by everybody in the Pac-12.
Yeah.
And I still think this Deion Sanders thing is just for a show and making videos, because he's putting videos out on YouTube about like how every week he's talking to somebody equipment, and it's like, why do you want to show all that stuff, And then he has a show on Prime TV, on Prime Video about Coach Prime, his first season at Jackson State. It's like, I understand you want to show you're a coach, but if you want somebody to take you seriously, don't put that stuff out there. You don't see Nick Saban doing it. He just does act like. That's all.
Yep. True.
Yeah. Do you agree, George? Do you agree? Like, it's like, like Freeman. You don't see Freeman out there going, "Hey, go to Checkers and get a big checker burger." He's quiet. He does his own thing.
It's a show.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm impressed by what Notre Dame did, this year in this bowl game. They were, that quarterback. I guess that's your quarterback for next year, George. No. Hey, you might get Harmon. You might get Harmon from Wake Forest. That might be a.
Oh yeah, Sam Hartman. Oh,
it's Sam Hartman in the portal, and
you like him, George. It's called Chris. It's called. If Sam Hartman goes to Notre Dame, we won't have to face him anymore in the ACC.
Yeah, exactly.
Buckner's not the answer.
No. And George, did you really? We had you weren't on the show back in during the Christmas season because you had stuff going on. We had the coach for Robert Morris on, Coach Clark. And did you realize that people don't realize this? That yes, it's great to be in the transfer portal. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, you want to transfer to Florida State, but what about your credits?
Yeah. Well, you got to hope everything falls where it's going to fall.
Yeah. Well, how about your credits? Yeah. What if Florida State doesn't have basket weaving? Or your credits at university of whatever university you go to won't transfer over. Why go to a new school? Because what? Do mommy and daddy think you might play better?
Going to the transfer portal, you're just hoping you have some place to land.
Right,
because and there's some of them right ticket out the door.
Yeah, and there's some of them right now. I heard stories last week that there's tons of people in the portal and they're stuck. Like people, there's too many people in that portal trying to find places to go to. Like the Clemson quarterback went out to Oregon State. Yeah, DJ. Yeah, he's gone.
Yeah.
They can have them.
Yeah,
No
they
loss
can have
there.
him.
And
Yeah,
look, and Chris, look at Grayson McAuliffe. He was in the transfer portal from Coastal Carolina, and he backed out.
right. And then I heard about Travis, about Jordan Travis. He was going to transfer beginning of the season to somewhere in the transfer portal, and he realized he has something going well in Florida State. So why am I going to leave? And if you watch the broadcast, he had Mike Norville had a whole presentation ready for him on PowerPoint, telling him what.
Yep.
And he
Yep.
said,
I saw that. I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to hopefully get the soccer. I think the soccer goalie probably forgot to come on. He's been a busy guy, but we'll get him on. Hopefully he'll log in. But right now, let's go back to what we're talking. If you guys just logged into our show, an hour and a half ago, we talked about what happened yesterday and last night in Cincinnati. And I had a privilege to talk to Dave Lampin this afternoon by Zoom. He's been a busy man. He was there last night doing the broadcast for the Bengals radio network, and this is what he saw. And let me play the interview until we get the goalie from the Blast to join us. So let's get back to let's play this video real quick. So here's my interview this afternoon with Dave Lampin. All right, folks. We have Dave Lampin with us, who was supposed to come on the show tonight because the game last night was Monday Night Football. But there's a different situation today. What happened last night? We all know what happened with the Bills player who collapsed on the field. So, Dave, you were there in the booth last night doing this game. It was 7-3. Higgins gets the catch, and it goes over the middle, and Hamlin tackles him. What was going through your mind? And you're like, this doesn't look right. Like for you, seeing this, what happened with Higgins and Hampton right there, tackled each other. And what was going through your mind?
Yeah, it was an innocuous play. I mean, Hamlin has made that tackle probably a million times. And T. Higgins has, lowered his shoulder and tried to gain yards after catch a million times. So this time it didn't end the way anybody wanted it to end. I don't know if there was a heart condition that Hamlin has been dealing with that hasn't been determined yet. I've heard all these rumors about aortic aneurysm and all this stuff. Who knows? Or if it was just from the contact in his chest that caused the irregular heartbeat. But he was in trouble, and it's unfortunate because T. Higgins knows him pretty well. In fact, Tyler Boyd has a football camp at Pittsburgh. Tyler Boyd knows Hamlin. They both went to Pitt, and he had Hamlin coming to his football camp. He had Higgins coming to his football camp. Those guys met each other, became friendly, and T. Higgins was devastated, after the game being involved in that play. But it was just a normal football play that did not end normally, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. Unfortunately, you're 100% at risk every single snap, 100% of the snaps, and that's the situation going in. But this one, the difference in this one is usually when players are taken off the field, they wave and acknowledge they're okay. This one, there was no closure like that. It really had the stadium just stunned. There's no other way to put it. Absolutely stunned.
Yeah, I was watching it from here, and I was like, it was like 7-3, and I'm like, why is it delayed? And said it was a hit, and there's a medical on the field. And I'm like, okay. All right, this game will resume after he gets off the field. And we normally see people pop up going, we're good, and we're off they're off the field and they get on the stretcher and then all of a sudden it took a little longer after that. And I'm like, I said to my girlfriend, I'm like, this is not right. There's something wrong here. And all of a sudden it was like really heartbreaking because you see all these broadcasters like Joe Buck, who's almost was in tears last night. He was almost in tears. Ryan Clark, who was on ESPN last night after the whole situation, he was literally almost in tears, and Scott Van Pelt was trying to, make him not, cry on the air. But for you guys are former players and broadcasters, this must have been one of those like gut wrenching things, and you're like, you start taking it back, thinking, what about me? What if it was me? What happened? What about my family? I was thinking about my parents. What had happened to me? You probably would have done the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. I observing the whole thing when every member of the team came out on the field, and then a lot of them couldn't even look. They had to turn away. I saw players crying. I saw players vomiting. I saw players, hugging each other. I knew at that point this was not your typical injury. The thing that alerted me immediately was both sidelines. The MVP of the game was the medical teams for both teams, and their immediate response and in mass. They went out there, and they went out there with a defibrillator. Went out there giving professional, CPR and everything they possibly could. It brought this young man back to life. I mean, he was in a bad way, and they literally brought him back to life, and he's still in critical condition. There hasn't been any update since, and he has to use a breathing tube and all, but at least he's still with us. And if the professionals that were there weren't, he wouldn't be here with us right now. So I can't say enough about their response, the professionalism with which they responded, and they saved a life, big time saved a life. So in front of a national television audience, a worldwide audience, I mean, it was primetime game, and it was prime time of the primetime game, the 9 to 10 o'clock hour. I mean, there were a gazillion eyeballs on that football game and saw what took place. It was the only game in town, and from a professional standpoint, so it was getting plenty of attention. It was getting a lot of media hype. And the game started out, both the quarterbacks were doing what people thought they were going to do, and it looked like it was going to be a track meet. Both teams scored on their first possessions, 7-3. Bengals' next possession, they were in the process of going down and getting points, and then the play happened.
Yeah. So what would these two teams like? Let's talk about the Bengals. What would they do? Was this game coming up on Sunday against the Ravens? Would they even get back on the field? Because the last image you saw was that guy on the field collapsing. And if you're a player, how are you going to get focused of knowing that could have been you?
Yeah, I think it would have been very, very difficult for players to continue last night. That's why the determination was made. Forget about it. Don't even go there.
Right.
To compartmentalize what you saw last night and go back and play football, that would have been too big an ask. It would have been unreasonable an ask. But I'm sure there are players from both teams that are getting counseling right now. I'm sure that some guys handle things. Everybody handles things differently. Some internalize more than others. And if you need to get counseling in some way, shape, or form, you should do it. And don't be embarrassed about it or anything else. You got to get your mind right, not just for football, but for life in general. And that's a traumatic experience to witness things like that they saw. And I think it's going to be a challenge for both football teams mentally to get ready to play. The Bills have the Patriots. The Bengals have the Ravens. Big division rivalry games. You got to get your mind right, as well as being physically capable and ready to go. It can go one of two ways. If you can't get over it and compartmentalize, you're going to struggle. If you can, it will be, we got to win this game for Hamlin. I mean, he gave the ultimate sacrifice to us by, what he went through on the football field on Monday night. Let's rally around him. Let's win this football game and go as far as we can. And let's win a Super Bowl for Hamlin. I mean, it could, you could see it being a rallying point potentially for the football team. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole thing unfolds. And from a Bengals perspective, same thing. It's like that's a punch in the gut seeing something like that happen. So you gotta get over it. If you need help to get over it, again, counseling, do whatever it takes, and then see what you can muster up and go beat the Ravens.
Exactly. Real quick before I let you go, is there anything from this game going forward or anything in the future that the NFL has to do to not have this happen again on prime time or anything down the road? Because I feel like this is now a turning point in safety for football. What do they need to do? And did they need, like you said, the medical team was, should be the MVP last night. What do you, in your eyes, what needs to be done better from this point forward so we don't have this scene again on Monday Night Football?
It's going to be interesting to see if it could have been prevented. If he had an aortic aneurysm, there's nothing they could have done, other than him not being on the football field. If it went undetected, That needs to be determined why it went undetected, if in fact it did happen, if he did have one. So some kind of predisposed condition, there's really not much you can do about it. Just like Gathers when he was playing college basketball, the older Marymount, and he has his heart condition. He had an enlarged heart, and he dies. And his team, Kimball's taking left-handed free throws in his honor and all that sort of thing during the tournament. It kind of brought all that back to me. But if in fact it was a direct hit to his chest that caused the irregular heartbeat, you're going to have to wear a flak jacket or a longer plate in the shoulder pads, whatever it takes to pad up that area and make sure that it doesn't happen again, if in fact that's the reason it occurred. So there's going to be a lot that goes on. I mean, the commissioner's not going to sit on his hands. He's going to say, let's go through all of our protocols. What was the cause? If we can identify it, what can we do to rectify it? And I'm sure there's a lot of people already working on that.
Yeah. Well, Dave, thanks so much for taking the time this afternoon, and bless you and your family, and bless the Bengals and everybody. And we're all here saying a prayer for that kid, and hopefully he'll get out of the speedy recovery, and we could all move on, and maybe could get some back to not normalcy, but somewhat, what football is. All right, and that's Dave Lampin, the voice, one of the broadcasters for the Bengals Radio Network, who was there last night during that game and telling his what he saw from the booth. So Adam, heart-wrenching, but we have to, let's move on. We'll talk about that after we talk to Bob here. Bob Newton, who is a friend of the show. I reached out to him this morning, or late this afternoon, because he was back in 1971. He was playing for the Chicago Bears, and he was a guard. And he witnessed something that we saw last night on Monday Night Football. He saw it in person with a tragedy death of a wide receiver for the Detroit Lions. So let's bring in Bob, who was there. Hi, Bob. How you doing?
Pretty good, thank you. How are you guys doing?
No, I saw your Facebook post last night, and I said I got to get you on because this is such a something we need to talk about, because what happened last night in Cincinnati, you witnessed it as a player back in 1971 at Tiger Stadium. You saw it firsthand what happened. Explain to folks what happened on that day, because I know you guys were playing the Bears. You guys were 3-2. The Lions were 4-1, and then all of a sudden this thing happened. It must have just took the air out of the entire Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, well, yeah, we the Bears won the game, but I think there was probably a minute and a half left in the game. The game was almost over, but Detroit was driving to score a touchdown. We were ahead by 4 points, I believe, and they couldn't win the game with a field goal, so they had to get a touchdown. And I believe they were completely out of timeouts, and the clock was running. And so when the Lions offense ran the play, Chuck went into the to the Bears backfield running a route, and he didn't get, from my recollection, he didn't even get touched. He didn't get bumped or anything, and he just down the field he just collapsed.
Wow.
And nobody, I don't believe anybody had touched him at that point, so there was no contact. And so a lot of the Bear players were thinking, he's faking it. They're because they were out of timeouts, and they're trying to get a referee timeout or whatever to stop the clock. And Dick Butkus was in that area, in the flat area, as a middle linebacker covering that coverage. And he walked by Chuck, and he could tell by Chuck's face that something was seriously wrong. And he's the one that started calling the personnel from the Lions bench come over and take care of him. I think he died. I think he probably died immediately. I think he was probably when they put him on the stretcher, that he was probably already had passed. That's kind of what I've come to understand. But there was no life-saving that could help him at that point. And I didn't know. We don't know what exactly. He might have had a heart attack, or he had a congenital heart issue that went undetected. or he had just a heart attack. But it wasn't from a contact. It wasn't from contact in the game,
Mm-hmm.
at least on that play.
Yeah. So, Bob, what was your feeling last night did you get a chance to watch this game? And what was your, and when you saw this young man who's basically 24 years old, second year in the league from University of Pittsburgh, ball right to the, he gets up, he hits T. Higgins, gets up, adjusts his face mask, and it goes backwards.
Yeah, that was
like, you're thinking to yourself, what is he doing?
Well, usually when you get a concussion, I mean, you may lay there a little bit longer. You're not going to get right up because you're trying to get figure things out.
Mm-hmm.
But he got up fairly quickly, and then you could tell he just lost all contact with his body and just fell. I've been hearing some of the possible reasons about the heart, about the the hits in the chest area and all that. A lot of these shoulder pads look like they've changed over the last decades. Especially on the offensive linemen, they're smaller shoulder pads. I don't know if their breastplate is big. The pads that we wore in the 70s and 80s, my whole chest was almost covered with a breastplate. So if somebody really jammed me in the chest, I had some good cushion for that. But that's kind of one of a possible explanation, or it was aneurysm or so forth. But some of the equipment changes, I'm sure they're going to be addressed, especially around the neck, shoulder area, chest area.
Yeah. Let's bring Adam in. Adam is a big NASCAR fan, and he saw this with Dale Earnhardt. I was thinking about that.
Yeah, I remember when Dale. Yeah, Carl. I remember, when Dale Earnhardt Sr. died at the 2001 Daytona 500. It was, it was something like. I mean, I remember that day like it was back in my hand, and it was like nobody thought it would happen, but it did. And same thing last night. It's like you think about it.
Yeah.
Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s number was 3. DeMar Hamlin's number 3. It's like, but Bob, you played with some incredible Hall of Famers in your time in the NFL. Did Gale Sayers and Dick Butkus in Chicago, and I can't rule out Steve Largent, a tremendous wide receiver with Seattle. So, what was it like to play with Steve Largent when you were in Seattle?
Yeah, well, he was a phenomenal player. He's a good friend. We're still good friends today. And I was thinking about Steve. I can't remember. I think it was in his 12th or 13th year, but he took a vicious hit from Mike Harden in the Denver Broncos game, and it knocked Steve out cold. And that's usually the kind of hits that you see where. Steve couldn't get up because he was out. He was totally unconscious. Mm-hmm. And that's what was different from what I saw last night. The young man was able to at least get up, but Steve was knocked out cold. Mike Harden hit him going full. They ran into each other going full speed, and Harden, face masked him right in his face mask, and he was catching a pass. And anyway, it was a very, very vicious hit. And, Steve's still being followed up now from that one hit. Well, we're all I had to go do a NFL concussion lawsuit assessment last week. We're all being monitored to see if symptoms start surfacing that they want to, follow us. Yeah. And, but, one thing, about one thing I don't know if I'm proud, but there's the brotherhood of the NFL, the players in that locker room. Those locker rooms are sacred to those players, and they are like brothers. Doesn't matter what race, creed, religion. When you go on that field, there's at least the way I felt, there was no color. There was no separate. They were my teammates, and I was going to do the best I can. to work with him, and the whole stadium just really rallied around this young man, and the whole nation, and that's a, I mean, because it is a serious it is a serious situation, but I was that was good to see that everybody rallied like that, especially especially the opponents. The Bengals and the Bills were mingling with one another. But that kind of shows you the brotherhood of the NFL.
Yeah. Well, I have to ask you a question. With Tiggins, with that, when he got hit by, number 3, and Tiggins, had to deal with the whole situation. You saw, what did the quarterback for the Lions, Landry, what did he go through? Did he go through a lot of serious mental issues after that?
Everybody was so stunned because we were kind of confused. We're still thinking he's faking it. He's trying to get an extra timeout, a referee time. So we didn't know. We just didn't know until, I don't know if he was. I think he was just. I don't think he was pronounced dead till after the game. We did finish the game, and I think that was their fourth down, and they didn't get any yardage. Anyway, we took the ball over and we closed the game out because I think there was like maybe less than a minute left, and we just killed the ball, and
Matt,
the game was over.
You got a question for Bob, real quick, Matt?
God, he's on mute.
Yeah, you're on. There you go. Matt,
yeah. So does that? I mean, looking at what happened, I mean, of course that doesn't bring back good memories and stuff. But I mean, how do you think that these kinds of things can be eliminated in the future?
That's the $100 million question, man. Football's a violent, aggressive game. That's one of the attractions of it. I guarantee you, if they start playing flag football out there, those stadiums are not going to be filled up. I mean, but I hope they do their due diligence. Maybe hopefully the kid didn't have any heart issue that was undetected, and it wasn't recognized. But I just hope the NFL, and I'm sure they will, they'll do the due diligence to find out if something could have prevented that.
Right.
The hit was the kid came up and they collided pretty good, but but it didn't look like it was. But you can't tell sometimes when those helmets are crashing into each other. It doesn't look like much, but it is. And also when the kids hit their helmets on the turf, when they fall backwards and hit their helmets on the turfs, that doesn't look very violent either. But boy, a lot of people get dinged from those types of hits. So I just hope they do the due diligence. And was there some kind of medical prevention that was part of it? And I'm hoping CPR. The one thing I said on that Facebook is, from what my understanding, after Chuck Hughes died, the NFL upgraded very much their emergency services on the sidelines. Back there, we were still kind of the wild, wild west, in the early 70s. And there was no concussion protocol, nothing like that, And so from what I hear, from what happened to Chuck, they did really upgrade their emergency services last night, and hopefully the help that young man got last night, as quick as he got it, was very life-saving for him.
Yeah. Adam reported that his oxygen thing is what was 100%, now down to 50.
Yep, that's right.
I saw that too. So he's making progress.
Yeah, he's making progress, but I think this kid's not going to play football the rest of his life. I think he's probably going to be a broadcaster, because I don't think if you want to have the same situation happen again,
And you just don't know. There's any one of those plays. out there on that field, something dangerous could happen. And, we know, I know as a player, I knew the risk. In my era, I knew the physical risk. I wasn't aware of the brain concussion risk as much because it just wasn't addressed at that time. But it's a violent game, and people are running really, really fast with a lot of intensity and a lot of energy. But again, that's one of the attractions of it.
I think it's like a freight train, Bob. Just when you have two trains collide, you can't stop it. Just boom.
Yeah. With the targeting rule, like I said, I think that they've tried to make some changes to make it safer. And if there's something that could come out of this, if it's something to do with the chest, with the engineering today that they have for uniforms, if a chest plate needs to be, used as part of that protection, I hope they make that, part of the policy and the changes.
Right. Well, Bob, let me let you go. Thank you so much for coming on tonight. I wanted to reach out to you because I think it was something important because, we have, my generation didn't see it. I think my father probably saw it when he was watching football, like my age, and I think somebody needed to know about that because, we didn't know there was a death in the NFL. And I think ever since then, now we have this situation is now another, from this point forward, we'll hopefully see better equipment, better stuff for players.
Yes, you bet.
We don't see this again on Monday Night Football and change the whole country because everybody tuned in last night to watch the game and
sure, it was a great game. It was an awesome game. I mean,
it was 7-3 right away, and it was going to be like a shootout.
Two of the best teams in the NFL. And so it was too bad.
Well, I want to wish you a happy New Year. Thank you so much for coming on. And
thanks, Chris. You bet.
We'll keep in touch, okay?
All right. Happy New Year, guys.
You too. See you.
Happy New Year.
Okay. See you.
All right. That's Bob Newton, who played for the Bears back in the 70s when they had that guy, pass away. There's another situation that, we talk about roadblocks. You look at the NFL with that situation in 71. They had a problem in 1997. My mom brought up. There was a guy from the Jets, Brown.
Yeah.
Suffered, he suffered a spinal cord injury in the last game of the year against some guy named Barry Sanders. And, I found a little clip. If anybody's tuning in to us, as parents, if you don't want to see this, please turn away. Please watch, go turn to channel 13, go do something because, you don't want to see this because this is, this is actually from NBC Sports back in 1997. And he gets tackled by, one of his players, his player ran into him. And then 59 for the Lions just hit him right in the back of the back. And look at that. It's just, they're stunned. Just like last night. Everybody was stunned. And luckily this guy, God bless him. He came out of it. He basically left him paralyzed. But what do you go through with that? And that's something that is stick in your mind forever. And this game last night, it's always going to remember as the game that this guy got injured.
Yeah.
And no matter who cares if they play this game next week or 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now, it doesn't matter because it's no way to play. It's almost like a hurricane. You can't play something when you have a national disaster. So our thoughts go out to Damar out there. And if you want to go to his GoFundMe page, before we bring in Anthony, his GoFundMe page is making big bucks right now. It's up to $4 million. So if you guys want to go on there, anybody want to go on there to let me see, why is this thing?
Andy Dalton, he made it. I believe it was a $3,000 contribution.
Yeah.
It's now, it's like it's incredible. And it's like it's
incredible.
I would recommend go doing it.
Yeah. So here it is. Here's the link. GoFundMe.com/ all that different letters and. Pledge whatever you want to give them. $5. It was people from different parts of the country. I was reading it this morning. Is that last night? a Bills fan, a Bronco fan, a Titans fan,
Oh,
a
yeah.
guy from Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, who lives in Philadelphia. Crazy. So, and before you go to bed tonight, folks, make sure you say a prayer for him, and his family and all that stuff. So let's bring in Anthony here. Let's change gears here. Anthony covers the Georgia Bulldogs. They're back in the national title game this coming Monday night against a new opponent. It's not Alabama, it's TCU. So let's bring in Anthony Dasher, who kindly to join us. Hi, Anthony. How are you doing?
Guys, I'm doing fantastic.
Thanks so much for coming on. I grabbed you right away after Georgia won. I was like, I need to get him on real quick. So talk about that game. You were there. That must be one of the thrilling games in your career of covering Georgia football. With last second, and everybody was hoping that he missed his field. He missed Ohio State guy missed the field goal, and it looked like the Army Navy game. Everybody ran the field.
Yeah. I mean, strictly from an excitement standpoint, as far as the football game itself goes. I mean, I've been asked this I don't know how many times since this game was over. And again, the perspective, I've been covering Georgia for over 25 years now, and the only other game that kind of came to mind was the 2018 Rose Bowl against Oklahoma that Georgia won in overtime. However, the only difference to me was in that game, it was back and forth. I can't even recall how many lead changes there was. In this game on Saturday night, Georgia was losing by 14 points in the fourth quarter. I mean, Ohio State was moving the football, doing whatever they wanted to. C.J. Stroud was just playing fantastic. But somehow Georgia finds a way to get a win. Their kicker misses a 50-yarder. I mean, just shanks it big time there at the buzzer. Almost the same time the clock struck midnight. When the kick, sailed left, and it was like Happy New Year. You hear the fireworks going off outside the Mercedes-Benz. It was a pretty incredible night. Like I said, that may have been, from an excitement standpoint, the best Georgia game I think I might have ever seen.
Yeah. And it was great. It was good games all around.
It's crazy.
Yeah, with TCU, taking out Michigan, and now you got TCU, who basically is down to like the whole country wants them to win because they haven't won something in like 1938.
Great story.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and you guys have to go out to LA, and they just had the Super Bowl out there this time, last year almost. So it's going to be a cool venue.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, the last time that Georgia was in LA, like I was mentioning earlier, was for the Rose Bowl, and I remember going to practice, one of the two practices they had out there that we rode by the site of SoFi Stadium. They were just starting the construction, so it's going to be pretty neat to go back now and see that fantastic facility there, in person.
So you've been covering Georgia for a long time, and Kirby Smart seems to be a mastermind, extremely intelligent, and just really a tremendous head coach. With his short tenure at Georgia. So, and that was a tremendous game. Go Dogs. Okay. I'm hoping they win the national championship. But here's the thing. But tell everyone how important that 4th and 1 timeout call was, because Ryan Day went ahead and called the play, but before he called the play, Kirby Smart sniffed it out. He saw that it was going to be a fake, and he called a timeout really quickly. So just tell us how important that was and how a head coach could quickly do that within seconds.
That was the call of the game. That may have been the play of the game, because if Ohio State converts that, very good chance they go ahead and score, and they push the lead to 18 points, and that would have been all she wrote. Funny thing though about that play, I don't know if you saw a replay of this, and referees didn't catch it. If you go back and you count the number of men on the field at that time that fake punt took place, you'll count 12. Referees completely missed that on that particular instance. But you're right, Coach Smart. The fact that that's just how focused, how much they study opponents' game film and all that, and they just noticed right away that this was not a typical set for how Ohio State typically goes about punting. So, and they kind of knew something was up, and sure enough, I mean, Stroud picks up, looked like the first down, and that was going to be all for Georgia. But Coach Smart, I didn't even realize it at the time, I said, well, that's the ball game. You're right there. I was getting ready to finish out my lead on my story. And but no, he called a timeout, in Georgia. They were to hold them, and the rest, I guess, is history there.
I mean, we'll just talk about how. I mean, within the past, I think it's 38 games, and I might be off by maybe a win or so, but he's like 37-1. Kirby Smart is in the past 38 games. Just talk about, or no, I think 27-1. So just talk about how incredible that is in this era where any game you can lose, but yet Kirby Smart, he's only lost one game in the past 28 games, and that was to Alabama in the SEC championship game last year. So, I mean, just talk about him and Kirby Smart's coaching and how brilliant he is.
Well, I mean, it starts, I guess, with just the fact that how he holds everyone in that football building accountable. Everybody has a role. I mean, from his assistant, his offensive coordinator, his defensive coordinator, all the way down to his lowest staff member, his lowest analyst, however you want to call it. Everybody is expected to fill a role and do it well. And but people ask all the time, what's the secret to Coach Smart's success? Well, granted, he did spend 11 years with Nick Saban, so that's a pretty good teacher, right there. But it all goes back to the players. I mean, the players he's able to recruit. You look back over, and the Coach Smart's now been there 7 years now. 5 of those years, Georgia had been ranked either 1 or 2 in the recruiting rankings, whichever ones you want to refer to. I mean, it's all about the Jimmies and Joes, and you look everywhere on Georgia's roster is 3. I mean, 4-star, high 4 stars, 5 stars. Give you an example: Warren McClendon, starting right tackle, is not able to play the other night because of a knee injury. They plug in a former 5-star, Marius Mims, guy 6'7", 330 pounds, and Georgia, doesn't miss a beat, and they're able to go out and do what they do. But again, it's just that old Oakland Raiders saying, commitment to excellence, and you combine that with the Jimmy and Joes they're able to recruit, and you've got a pretty program that's pretty hot right now.
Exactly. Well, Anthony, thanks so much for coming on tonight, and have a safe trip to California, and we'll talk to you down the road. Okay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anthony.
Yep.
Thanks. Go Dogs.
All right.
Yeah, go Dogs.
Before we bring in Rob here, because we're going to at the end of the show here, I found something, Matt. We got to go back to the Wayback File.
Wayback File.
And Adam, this is back in 2000. The last time he was talking about Georgia was in overtime in the Rose Bowl.
Oh no! You're going to show that video, are you?
Yes, I am. So
oh, Chris.
All right,
come
Adam,
on, Matt.
All right, ready?
Yep.
Oh, Chris.
Jesus! You motherfucker! Come on!
I didn't realize you dropped the bomb there, dude. I forgot that you dropped the F-bomb there. Sorry, kids, for that one.
Chris, you should play the whole thing.
We'll edit it. How about that? We'll play it another time. So let's bring in Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hey, guys.
Yeah. We were trying to, he got all excited last time when Georgia was in that Rose Bowl. So I was like, I didn't realize he dropped a bad word on there. I'm like, oh boy, that's great. Just internet radio. What can you do? Yeah. How you doing, Rob? How's everything?
Hey, it's good, man. Chris, it's been a while. I think you had me on when I was at Sam Houston, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
is that right?
Yes, and you took over for Jeff, who went down to Tallahassee. So it's pretty funny. You guys switch roles.
Yeah, I don't think it's you can't take over for a guy like Jeff Colhane, but I'll tell you what, man. I told him, I said, you left some pretty big shoes to fill, and he joked around and said, go to the toddler store, find a size 2 shoe, and those are the shoes that I left you.
Nice. So talk about your first year up there, and besides the snow, and you're not used to the snow, you're used to the warm weather of Texas. And you're like, you saw a blizzard, you're like, what the heck is this?
I was just about to. You already took it away from me, man. You said talk about the first year. I said, well, we got 1.5 feet of snow and 5 degrees. We've already had a -20. So what more could you ask for? It's amazing when you pray for an opportunity. Bridget and I were so thankful to be in Huntsville, Texas, and East Texas, and definitely miss our Sam Houston family and all the folks there. But we had a baby. We were blessed with a little baby girl 13 months ago, and we were just looking for, you know, a new opportunity, to be honest, that to just a better situation to where I could support my family. And so, you know, it's funny, you pray, and then all of a sudden God says 1,200 miles to the frozen tundra, 3 hours away from Canada, eh? So that's where we're at. You bet. Hey, you betcha.
Yeah. Have you been to Canada yet? Have you been?
I've been to Victoria, Canada years ago to the Bouchard Gardens. If you ever get a chance, that's up in the Pacific Northwest. We took a little clipper ship over there, but no, we have not been. And it's been go nonstop. As soon as we got here, we hit the ground running. In fact, I was preparing for the Sam Houston Texas A&M game. That was 3 weeks out, and then the opportunity came, and you know, I sought it. Honestly, there was a application process, but you know, I didn't think I'd get it. There's so many talented people in this industry, as you guys know, and the door opened up, and we went through it, and couldn't be happier. Enjoying it up here. I'm in the basement right. I looked around. I was like, "What is a basement? We don't have those in Texas." But we got a basement. It's covered in confetti. I don't have my official camera set up, but this is what it looks like right now.
Oh, jeez.
Wow.
That was from the other day announcing hip baby boy is on the way, July 15th.
Congratulations. That's awesome.
So appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, let's just talk about this game. You're going back to Texas. You're going back down to your neck of the woods. You're gonna be down there in your element, you know, warm, and you're going, oh, this is gonna be great. You know, so just talk about this game. But you're taking on South Dakota State. You're bringing the two coldest teams down to Texas to get warm for a couple of days, and then you're going to go back to Frisco, and you're back up to Fargo, and you're going to be like, oh God.
Yeah, Coach was joking yesterday on the Bison football radio show that we have, and he said, you know, that cold air is going to get on the plane behind us and follow us down to Frisco, but it's not terribly cold this year. It's going to be in the mid to upper 50s. Should be a little bit of sunshine. It does get a little cold there though with the wind at Toyota Stadium, but you know, what a matchup. How can you not love the FCS and the playoff system and how everything works out? And then when North Dakota State gets that number 3 seed, it worked out beautifully because that put South Dakota State as the number 1 on one side. Of course, they got the number 1 ranking after defeating North Dakota State in the regular season. But you put up number 1, number 3, that set up arguably what will become, I believe, right now it is the most highly anticipated national championship in the FCS. I've heard many say that. I can kind of stand and say that I believe it is, and I'm hoping for a great game. You know, it would be great to see a close game come down to the end, just like I saw there with Sam Houston and South Dakota State in their first ever matchup there in Frisco in the spring season. It came down to literally a couple of final plays, and I'm hoping to see that kind of a football game. I think fans love those type of close games. They
do. And I was just looking at the Towson University schedule. I guess 2024, I guess I'll hit up your neck of the woods. It's in September. So what's the weather like in September?
It depends. You know, we were here and it was actually still warm through October. So I think you'll be all right. It's a little nerve-wracking whenever you see signs on the side of roads and neighborhoods that say no parking November 1st through April the 15th. That's because the snow plows. That's a long winter.
Jeez, that's crazy. Adam, you got a question for
Rob? Yeah. First of all, I am going with North Dakota State to win the FCS National Championship in Frisco, Texas, Rob. I always love watching you guys. And what was it like your first time calling a North Dakota State home game in the Fargo Dome? Was for fans that may not be familiar, the Fargo Dome, where the Bison play, is nuts. So, Rob, what was it like your first time calling a home game there?
Yeah, it's a great question because everyone told me when I was at Sam Houston how intense the Fargo Dome is. Of course, the Bearcats played there a couple of times, but for me to call a game as a Bison broadcaster, I'd never been there. I wasn't there with Sam Houston that long, so I never got to experience, but I heard from my colleague Brian Adams there back in the day saying, get ready, man. And so you show up, literally the papers and the press box rumble. That is how loud it is. facility that can seat up to 19,000 or so, and one of the most exciting venues that I've ever been able to be a part of at the FCS level. And you go back to that first game versus Drake, and the Bison came out strong, winning that game easily, and the crowd was into it, as they always are here. Bison Nation shows up. Bison Nation is loud. In fact, with that journey down to Frisco, they've got their own app, a Bison Tracker app, and you can literally see a ton of cars starting to line up on that app heading down to Frisco. But, to go back to your first question, it was unbelievable to be there, to be in that atmosphere, to be surrounded by Bison Nation. And then what a blessing to sit next to the Hall of Famer, Phil Hansen, my analyst, played for the Buffalo Bills. He's in their Ring of Honor there that's up at the stadium. And so just to be sitting next to him, calling a game, being next to one of the best there at that position, it's just been phenomenal. Something that I will never take for granted, that I don't take for granted, that I never will, because you guys know in this industry, it's a privilege. It's not a right. There's a lot of talented people out there, and I'm just blessed to be a part of it. That first game, exciting, and as the season went on, more and more rumbling, more vibration than Fargo Dome. And we like to say that the Bison Nation is heard all over the Midwest, if not the United States there, whenever we're playing at home here in Fargo.
Wow, that's crazy. Adam, you had a question for Rob? Go ahead. Or no, Matt has a question. I'm sorry. Matt, do you have a question? Forgot.
Yes, Rob. So what are the keys to this FCS championship game?
Yeah, good question. All good questions, guys. Appreciate it, Matt. When you look at this matchup, I think you're going up against the best rushing defense in the nation. They hold opponents to under 90 yards a game on the ground. You go back throughout the season, and SDSU only allowed 3 teams over 100 yards on the ground. One of them was North Dakota State in that regular season matchup. So I think fans like to see the numbers on paper, but at the end of the day, when toe meets leather and that kickoff happens, you can kind of throw all that out the window. So I think one of them is you just got to win the turnover battle. I know that these are kind of cliche and it may sound like coach speak, but it's the truth. You get out there and win the turnover battle, you got a good chance of winning the game. And don't force third and long situations. Set your team up to where you're in third and short situations. I think that's an area that the Bison have improved on as this season went on. When you get into the red zone, you've got to score touchdowns. And then I think another thing is just play your game as the Bison. The Bison, the staple is the A-gap power, is that heavy run offense. And if we can have a great game on the ground, take care of business there, maybe a couple of trick plays. We'll see what Tyler Roll, the offensive coordinator, has up his sleeve. But I think those are the keys, win that turnover battle, win the time of possession, convert third downs to where it's third and short. Don't set yourself up for third and longs. And if you can do those things, you've got a great shot against a great team. This time of the year, you wouldn't be in the national championship if you weren't down to the two or three, 4 greatest teams left in the league as the season goes on. And this is going to be a clash of the ages. Going to be a good one.
It's going to be great. It's going to be live on ABC on Sunday at 2 o'clock Eastern time. 1 o'clock Central, and is it still Central up in North Dakota? Because when you send me text back and forth, I thought it was a different time zone up there.
It is, and see, there's some of that North Dakota coming out of me now. I've already picked up on that. Yep. So you betcha, and yep, it's good place, good people, but absolutely still Central time. And I was talking to our great communications guy there with NDSU football, Ryan Peralt, one of the best in the business, and we were talking because I remember the game being on ABC with Sam Houston SDSU. Ryan had told me that it's happened one other time with North Dakota State, and I've got to validate and do a little bit more research, but I believe this is only, and if I'm incorrect, correct me, but I believe this is only the 3rd time in FCS National Championship history that this has been on ABC. And it is the first time, during a non-COVID year and all that, playing on a Sunday. So I like how it's moved to a Sunday. It's great for the FCS. People say, oh, well, you got to battle the NFL. Man, if you can line up there and have a game alongside the NFL and then the following night have the FBS National Championship, you're right, sandwiched in the middle of a lot of good football.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a great weekend of football. You got Saturday Night Football with the NFL. You got you guys on Sunday with the NFL, and then finish up with the national title game on Monday, in LA. And I guess we'll be done with football until the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there's some other things that I'm trying to dig into. I like to do the main prep work that you absolutely have to have first, and then I like to look for little nuggets. We do know that this is the first time this season that the Bison will play on a grass field, Toyota Stadium. Of course, soccer It is a grass field. The Missouri Valley Football Conference, I believe all the schools are on turf, so we'll be playing on grass. And I want to go back and look because this is the 114th game between these two programs dating back to the early 1900s. I believe it's 1903, 1904, somewhere in there. But I'm wondering what is the highest games played between two opponents that have met in the FCS National Championship before. I don't know that number, but when I'm looking at 113 games played between these two, 114th will be the national championship. That's got to be up there among the top between two schools. And then for the second time in Missouri Valley Football Conference history, it's two schools from the Missouri Valley meeting up. So North Dakota State was there the first time alongside a Missouri Valley Football Conference school, now facing South Dakota State. So that's exciting for the conference as well. And it just shows you the power of the MVFC and what they've been able to do over the years.
Exactly. It's going to be great. Well, I hope to talk to you more down the road. Rob, thanks so much for coming on. Be careful going down to Texas. Hopefully you have a good time going back down there and go eat your barbecue and enjoy yourself and bring some good barbecue back up to North Dakota. They'll be like, oh, this is what's down in Texas?
That's right. Well, Matt, Adam, and Chris, keep up the good work. Chris, I've enjoyed keeping up with what you've done over the years, and you don't know how much it means to me just to be a part of your program. And then, of course, I got to just mention that we're going to continue to pray there for DeMar in that situation. That's been tough. And, at this point, man, right now, nothing else really matters. It's about just him, and our thoughts and prayers remain with him and his family, and we're praying and believing for a full recovery. So I appreciate you guys very much.
Hey, Rob, I was thinking about not doing the show tonight because I didn't think it was it's appropriate for me to do it. I'm thinking, because I had somebody I knew cancel a show today. I'm like, okay, it didn't affect you. Why are you, and I'm thinking we got to have some, normalcy in life.
You do.
And I feel like, and there's a lot of things with this situation, a lot of areas that I couldn't talk about because a lot of people got really upset about, the video, from the play. To me, I think it was just looked like a normal tackle, but I don't want to put it out there because somebody got upset about it. And I don't want to be that, I don't want to be that network, that's, and it was something I got to give my credit to my girlfriend who actually helped me today, try to figure out what's the best way to do this because we don't know what to do in these situations as broadcasters. We want to give you the news. We want to give you what you want to talk about, but you don't know what's right and what's wrong. And you don't want to offend somebody.
Yeah, no, and I know that you were, that we were about to wrap this up, but you brought up, a good point there. And I think that, you have to continue on, but you also have to be mindful of the situation and what has transpired and what is happening. And what I've encouraged folks, there's a lot of outlets out there that have information, that are putting out information, but I've encouraged folks, look, if you want to know what's going on, follow Jordan Rooney. He is the marketing their guy with building athlete brands. He's best friends with DeMar Hamlin. He brought DeMar on when he was in Division I. DeMar actually reached out to him and said, I want an intern for you. And Jordan Rooney is kind of that guy that's been pegged as the official spokesperson for the family. And so I just tell folks, look, follow what Jordan is putting out there because he's putting out those messages. But yeah, we just have to be mindful. And I think you got to go on and you got to continue to have your shows. But you also got to be mindful of that situation and just keep him and that family in your prayers. And that's all you can do.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much.
Guys.
We'll talk to you soon.
All righty. Hey, y'all have a blessed night. Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Horns
All
up
right.
and go Bison.
Go Bison.
Go Bison.
Yeah. Bye. All right. That's Rob Hipp, who's the voice of the North Dakota State football. Used to be with Sam Houston State. So it's a good way to, we're a little over our boundaries here. Yeah, over 2 minutes over the time limit, and getting the look over there.
So do you guys want to do some national championship predictions?
Yeah, real quick, just real quick before we wrap it up here. So, all right, let's start with Matt. Matt, who do you think is going to win?
I think it's going to be a close game. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I could be wrong, but I think it's going to be a close win. Georgia Bulldogs are going to repeat first time since Alabama Crimson Tide did it in 2011, 2012. So go Dogs. I feel you're going to be the champs.
Okay. Adam, go ahead.
Go Dogs. Go
Right.
go Brock Bowers. Go Kirby Smart. Go Stetson Bennett. I've seen a lot of Georgia fans up here in North Carolina. So it's like, go Dogs.
All right, so you pick Georgia. You pick Georgia. I want to go with TCU. They got to win something. That area of Fort Worth and Dallas, they're dying for a title because they haven't won one since 1995 with the Dallas Cowboys winning the Super Bowl, and the Mavericks didn't have won one a basketball title since the early 2000s. So they need something in that city to be fired up. So I'm going to go with TCU. I could be wrong, just like I pitched Michigan versus Ohio State last week. Come on.
But Chris, to your point, I think it's going to be a very close game, and I still feel TCU could upset Georgia. It's not like a written off game because Georgia is a double-digit favorite. TCU is going to use that as tremendous momentum. They already feel like when no one's giving them any chance. So TCU does have a good chance, but I just think with Stetson Bennett, with Kirby Smart, Kirby Smart as the head coach, the calls that he did in that game against Ohio State with the timeout, with some other stuff, with the fourth quarter comeback, I think right there you got some playmakers, you got the head coach, you got Bennett, okay, you got some things they got to brush up on their defense a little more, okay. So, but I think it's gonna be a close game. I don't see a blowout either way, but TCU could pull off the monumental upset as well. So that could happen, but I'm just leaning more towards the Dogs. I think it's gonna be a fourth quarter game. And who knows? There could be another winning field goal by Georgia or by TCU. But I just feel Georgia will get will win the national championship.
Yeah. Well, before we go, we're going to say hello to Dan Dakota, who was down in Dallas watching the Cotton Bowl. So you can join him every weekday morning at 9 to 11 a.m. for a wake up call with DT. He does a great job with the Syracuse sports and in the AAC and the ACC and all the stuff. And he was down there for the Cotton Bowl, so he was doing his Cotton Bowl coverage. And he's up in New York, so he's probably hearing all about what's going on at DeMar. So hopefully everything goes well with him, and hopefully we'll get better news another time. Please join us next Tuesday, January 10th at 7. We'll have Mike Albee joining us, along with my interview with Parker Bone III, and we'll recap all the championship games over the weekend with the SBS title game, the Jackrabbits taking on the Bison.
Bison.
The Bisons. And then we got the Horned Frogs taking on the Dogs. So on Monday night. So in the meantime, before we leave, I forgot to tell you folks, and we do a little in this history of sports history. We didn't touch most of the stuff I had planned, and I will talk about that down the road next week. But we have on this date in let me bring it up real here, 1976. Speaking of songs, Bob Dylan had a song called Hurricane, who helped promote the cause to get Reuben Carter out of jail. So here's a little clip of what's his name? Bob Dylan singing it from 1976. And for now, I'm Chris Heidel. Thanks for joining us. That's Adam. That's Matt. George Bashir had to go, but thanks for him for joining us tonight. We'll leave you with Bob Dylan, and we'll see you all next Tuesday.
Pistol shots ring out in a ballroom night. It's a Betty Valentine from the floor above. She sees a bartender in a pool of blood. Cries out, they killed my love. Here comes the story of the hurricane. The man the authorities came to blame for something that he never